agenda.
So move.
Second.
So item number 4 for discussion is denying petition of incorporation, and item number 18 has been added. So I propose that we just put those two together for that discussion. So then, the idea was that if we remove 4, everything would be renumbered and it would really change the agenda. So I support doing that if there's support by the other commissioners.
I'll second that.
So item number 4 to be included with item number 18 at the end of the meeting. Are you supportive, Commissioner?
Yes.
Okay, so hearing that motion's been made, any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
and chair votes yes. Okay, right on schedule. Item number 9, presentation of 25-year service award to Kevin Furlong, IT operations manager. So come on up. We'll say a few words. We'll get a photo, but thank you very much for your service.
Hi, everyone. For the record, Tanya Mahood, IT Director and CTO, and
I'm Kevin Furlong.
here to recognize Kevin for his 25 years. So a couple things. If I think of Kevin, there are 3 words that I think of him that he represents, and that's smart, technical, and dedicated. And one might say tech savvy, but if you've ever been in a meeting with Kevin, he writes everything down on a piece of paper rather than a laptop. So I like to give him a hard time about that. I've worked with Kevin for 7 months out of his 25 years. So I think it's best that I share some things that I've learned about Kevin from the folks he works with or for him. So Kevin is an extremely hard worker and truly cares about Deschutes County. He is a great collaborator who reaches across departments to come up with innovative ideas. He's a professional and leads his team by example. He has a very strong technical background and demonstrates a growth mindset by learning new skills. He's approachable, welcoming, helpful, and friendly. And I can vouch for this because I ask him a million questions and he's still all of that. So congratulations, Kevin, for reaching your 25 years, and I look forward to many more years ahead.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's been great. Deschutes County is probably one of the best places I could imagine working. It's been fantastic. So look forward to another 25.
Oh, there you go. There we go. We got it on record. Well, but thank you very much. I know, technology has absolutely evolved. Cybersecurity is kind of the topic of the day. We seem to have, kind of mature systems, but oh boy, it's been the wild, wild west watching the evolution of the systems, the email, the tools that we use on our software, on our desktop, the stuff that's built in-house. So I want to thank everybody, but especially you for that calm, cool and collected leadership that you do provide. And it is interesting when you see a full technology person walking around with a notepad taking notes, but you do need to stay organized and whatever works for you. That's what the key is here. Any other thoughts?
No, technology allows us to do so much. It is so powerful. And as we just saw, it can also be a real bottleneck when it breaks down. So thank you so much for keeping Deschutes County functioning.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's the team that does it all.
There you go. Thank you. Time for a photo. So we want to thank the rest of the team for joining up, showing, support for them. There you go. Yeah. Sure.
Oh, the
Yes.
should be in the picture.
Yeah, the team's going to come up right after we take one photo.
So
Thank you.
should I? You all want to hold that.
Oh, you can hand it. Yeah, good. Well, I got it.
Oh, do I have to?
Yeah.
Oh, you scored it. I didn't-
There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Ready, 3, 2. Got it. Thank you so
No,
much.
how about the rest of the team? We'll put a big
So
picture of
25
everybody up on the wall here someday over in your office.
That's impressive.
You want some shirt, man?
Oh, that's fancy.
The last would be great.
Here you go.
I do soccer.
Yeah.
Go diagonal here.
Yeah.
Get it all.
As tight as you can.
All right. Say 25.
All right, ready, 3, 2, 1.
There you go. Thank you.
Got it, thank you.
Congratulations. 25 more?
Yeah.
Well, and a special thanks to everybody who serves the people of Deschutes County. We do have just over 1,200 employees, and it's nice to take a moment and recognize those long-term employees. At this time, item number 10, this is a public hearing and resolution amending the Deschutes County 23-24 fee schedule to add a new fees in Community Development Department.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. Laura Skundrick, Management Analyst. So today we're here for a public hearing to amend the fiscal year 24 fee schedule as requested by the Community Development Department. The request includes adopting 4 new fees as well as clarifying some language of 4 existing fees. So we do have CDD staff here with us today. If you'd like, they can take some time to explain the changes. And then you can open up the public.
Yep,
hearing.
so this will be a public hearing, but yeah, a little bit more information.
Thank you. Sherry Penner with Community Development. And with me, I have Will Groves, our planning manager. And as Laura stated, we are here to ask for 4 new fees, and you'll see these on the fee schedule in your packet on page 82. So the first one is a petition to incorporate. The second is recreational vehicle used for residential purpose. And the remaining 2 are road vacations with and without public hearing. And those current processes occur in the road department, but as soon as these fees assuming these fees are adopted, that process will move to community development. And then we're asking for some revisions on descriptions for previous fees that we had for RVs used for temporary purpose and medical hardship. And so we're just clarifying that language as we add RVs for residential purpose.
And some of these are from state law change, just the terminology, those medical hardship, because RV occupancy is an opportunity that's coming to us now. And the other items are previous current activity that takes quite a bit of staff time to be able to respond to. So any other questions from the board?
I do have a question about the first one. Petition to incorporate the $13,802. Is that for the Mountain View incorporation process, or where did we come up with that number?
Well, it would not apply to Mountain View as that process had begun when we did not have fees. And I do have Will here to talk about the amount of staff time that goes into each of these processes.
Yeah, good morning. Your planning manager, Will Groves. Regarding the incorporation process, we don't do a lot of those. We, of course, have done this for the city of LaPine recently, have had the hearings for the city of Mountain View. And under the current fee schedule, we capture no fees associated with that. And that had, in both cases, represented a significant staff effort. We had chosen a similar fee item, which is a plan amendment with goal exception. That has a similar amount of criteria as sort of a basis for assigning this fee. And we do them, most of our fees, we have a pretty good calibrated notion of what they cost us because we do dozens of them a year and we can begin to understand what that looks like. But what we found is that, each of these incorporation requests have been a really high level lift in terms of staff resource allocation, and that we found it matched very similarly this other process. And so we matched the fee to that. That's something that, of course, if we saw more incorporations over time, we could adjust that if they turned out to be easier or harder. Maybe as we get more experience, they get easier, or maybe we get ones that are more controversial and they get harder. But this definitely had significant portions of our staff and our highest level staff engaged for months in association with this. And under the current fee schedule, no dollars were captured.
Commissioner.
I wanted to just clarify, make sure I'm understanding the road vacation related fees. So is the work currently being done by road department staff, or is it they're collecting a fee and CDD is already doing the work? Or
the road department staff is currently doing this work.
Okay. And are these the same fees that they're charging?
No, they're higher. One of the things that we got in the handoff was that they said they were radically under capturing fees with regard to the effort. We responded with the fees that you're seeing here. The $1,500 fee is typical for other items where we have public involvement notices of decisions made. The $3,000 is typical of other board facing processes.
Okay, so at this time, this is a public hearing on the matter. Fee schedule proposed, add new fees for the Community Development Department. Having an open hearing, is there anybody here to speak on this matter? Is there anyone online with a raised hand feature? Oh, okay, good. So Cody Smith is available from the Road Department. So this is the public hearing at this time, Cody. If you didn't hear that, I don't know if you're just coming into the meeting. So I don't know that you want to testify in the matter, but we could ask you questions. So-
Good morning, Commissioners, and for the record, Cody Smith, County Engineer, Road Department. I was actually raising my hand immediately after Commissioner Chang had asked the question
Okay.
about the vacation fee. So I just wanted to provide a little more clarity on that. The intent with transitioning some of the administration of road vacations from the Road Department, or excuse me, let me rephrase that. The intent is to transfer some of the administration duties of road vacation proceedings from the Road Department to the Community Development Department with that proposed fee for CDD. The reason for that is in cases where we have road vacations that are subject to public hearings, we, the Road Department, really don't have the infrastructure for all the notice and some of the other procedure stuff around those public hearings, whereas Community Development Department's basically doing it on a daily basis. So more for the just the sake of that portion of the Road Department, still under statute, still has to have a considerable role in road vacations with developing the road officials report, being there for the hearing, probably leading the hearing when those come to the board. So, but in terms of some of the behind the scenes administration notice stuff, that's become more and more burdensome for the Road Department to deliver. So that's the intent with this fee. So meanwhile, we, the Road Department, still have a road vacation fee in place. What we're anticipating actually is kind of a transitional period in here, and as we roll some of those duties over to CDD, probably just charging petitioners the CDD fee and waiving the Road Department fee in this case. And as we look forward to, after we get a couple of these under our belt and look forward probably to next fiscal year, Road Department would update their fee schedule to a much more nominal fee just to cover the Road Department's hours in a typical road vacation proceeding. So.
Good, more information.
Yeah. Great to see departments coordinating and dividing labor in the most efficient ways possible.
So being a public hearing, there's nobody in the room. Is there anybody else online with the raised hand feature? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing on this matter. So this is proposed, fee, added new fees during the 23-24 fiscal year. So this fiscal year, a couple of observations. So, there's legal is involved with all these things. So there's indirect fees associated with all the efforts that legal provides for all these efforts. So, I mean, there's definitely effort, billable time, or maybe not billable directly, but professional legal work done on every one of these matters. And then also, like we've learned in the past, the fact that, there can be a discussion about a request for, waivers for the fees or general fund subsidy for the good of the community. So this empowers us to even have a conversation with this fee on the books, for an applicant. So any other discussion, or are we ready for a motion for adoption?
If we're ready, move approval of resolution 2023-052 to amend the Deschutes County 2023-24 fee schedule to adopt new fees and revise fee descriptions in the Community Development Department as detailed today.
I will second it, but I do have a
Okay,
question.
yep.
My question for legal is, I know Mountain View is asking us to reconsider. If we're passing this now, is it approved immediately? And does that mean if they ask to incorporate, would this $13,802 be, would that be something that they would have to face?
It would be only for new petitions,
Okay,
so it would not be applicable to the existing petition.
all right.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Any other discussions or questions? Seeing none, Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes. So thank you very much. Real business-like atmosphere to provide these services. Item number 11, consideration of approval of for road department submittal of ODOT local bridge program applications.
Hello again, and again for the record, Cody Smith, County Engineer, Road Department. The ODOT Local Bridge Program is ODOT's mechanism for allocating federal highway bridge funds to local agency bridge rehab or replacement projects. Every ODOT STIP cycle, so STIP is ODOT's statewide transportation improvement plan that go on 3-year cycles. Every upcoming STIP cycle, ODOT puts out a call for projects for the local agency bridge program. So we've recently received that call for projects. Applications for the program are due on October 16th. Road Department is presently working on 4 applications for this program. Today, we're seeking board approval for Road Department submittal of those applications. Just to briefly cover the 4 applications that we're working on right now. I'm going to kind of lump 3 of these together, but the Spring River or Harper's Bridge over the Deschutes River down in the Sun River area, South Century Road Bridge over the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad Bridge, also in the Sun River area, and then the Cottonwood Road Bridge, also over the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad Bridge. All 3 of those projects are rehab projects that primarily consist of some major concrete repairs on various elements of the bridge. Our current estimate, we're still dialing these estimates in, but our current total cost estimate for each project for the Spring River Road Bridge Rehab Project is $1,131,000. For the South Century Road Bridge Project, it's $2,533,000. And for the Cottonwood Road Bridge Project, our current estimate is $2,400,000. Lastly, the 4th application we're working on is for a bridge on Sizemore Road that crosses the Tumalo Reservoir Feed Canal. That's presently a timber bridge, or excuse me, a timber deck bridge with steel girders. The bridge is fairly significantly load rated. This bridge is on the route that is planned as the bypass route for the 4606 road that the Forest Service is currently working on. I believe has secured some funding for the portion of that road over the National Forest. So anyway, so that's our 4th. All 4 of these bridges align with our bridge management program and bridge needs that we've identified previously for at least for rehab projects. There's no bridges, so there's a total of 10 bridges for under Deschutes County ownership that are eligible for the local bridge program presently. None of those projects were eligible for full bridge replacement dollars. It was all rehab projects. So these are the 4 projects out of those 10 eligible bridges that we have that are actually where a rehab project is actually warranted as opposed to a bridge replacement project. Just a little bit of context. So Deschutes County, we had 10 eligible bridges for rehab out of the program. There's a total of approximately 1,600 bridges statewide, just county bridges that are eligible for the local bridge program. So there's obviously some huge needs in regards to bridge rehab and replacement statewide on the local system. We're competing against a lot of other counties with much greater needs for bridge replacement and bridge rehab projects than we are. But that said, we have had some success in this program recently. Actually, today we'll be opening bids for our Gribbling Road Bridge Replacement Project. That's a bridge project that was awarded local bridge program funds for the current STIP cycle. So we'll be kicking off. We'll be coming to the board here in a couple of weeks for the notice of intent to award for that project and get that project underway here this fall. With that, happy to answer any questions, but otherwise, again, just looking for board approval for the road department to submittal of these 4 applications.
Great. Questions?
Cody, when you were talking about other counties with more dramatic needs than we have, I mean, are we basically in a situation where because we do a good job of taking care of our roads and bridges, we're at a disadvantage in grant cycles, like while other places who might let things fall apart are more competitive for this particular grant program?
I think in general, I would say we're at somewhat of a disadvantage here. I certainly wouldn't characterize it as a case where other counties are not doing as good of a job as we are doing necessarily. Other counties, particularly counties on the other side of the mountains, have much larger bridge inventories. You know, a lot more natural waterways that their road systems are crossing. You know, just from my own experience, you know, prior to coming to Deschutes County, I was the county engineer at Douglas County. Here in Deschutes County, we have approximately 57 bridges on our system, and if I remember correctly, I think the total square footage of deck area is something. If we put all the bridges right next to each other, it'd cover an area of approximately, I think, 4 acres. I came from Douglas County, where we had about 312 bridges in our inventory, and if we put all our decks next to each other, it covered an area that was approximately 60 acres. Other counties just have much bigger inventories and are dealing with many more bridges that are reaching the ends of their service life than we are. You know, a lot of our bridges here are crossing man-made channels, or crossing canals, or crossing other features like that. We don't have a lot of bridges that are crossing natural waterways here. So issues like scour and flooding aren't as much of a challenge with our bridge inventory as they are with some of those bridges, particularly for counties over on the other side of the mountains. So yes, in general, in this program, we're at a little bit of a disadvantage. Just we're not quite as competitive. We have been successful. I mentioned our Gribbling Road Bridge that we're about to start construction on. Our Sizemore Road, the historic Sizemore Bridge rehab project that we did a few years ago, that was also done with local bridge program funding. But that said, there's some huge needs, a lot more needs than this program can fund statewide here. So there is a requirement in the ODOT AOC LOC agreement for this program that at least 10% of the local bridge program funding has to be spent by ODOT region. So we know that at least 10% of the funding has to be assigned to our region here, Region 4, which also includes Klamath County, Crook, Jefferson, Wasco, some other counties. So who those counties also have some needs even bigger than ours too. So that's, you know, a little bit of the statewide context with that.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate having a good inventory and knowing what our priorities are, because that's the key to the whole thing. You know, just understanding the status of our bridges and what could be done for improvement, and knowing that we're talking a couple years from now to be able to invest in these to keep them functioning as we expect them to.
One other question. So the Tumalo Feed Canal Bridge, has that been closed at some points in the recent past? I feel like I've been out there and seen gates or barriers or something up there.
We the road department have not closed the bridge in recent history, to my recollection. I want to say it was 2 years ago now, we did have to put a load posting on that bridge. So off the top of my head, I don't remember the load posting on that, but basically anything bigger than a pickup pretty much is restricted from going over that bridge presently.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, is there any other discussion or a motion?
I move approval of the road department submittals of ODOT local bridge program applications.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
and I will vote yes also. Thank you very much. Good
Thank you.
information. Item number 12, request for approval of 2 grant proposals for the Central Oregon Landscape Resiliency Project and a Community Wildfire Defense Grant. Kevin Moriarty's with us here. And then Chris Doty may be online if he's going to join you. Here we go. Thank you for joining us.
Morning, Commissioners. For the record, Kevin Moriarty, County Forester. Today I'm here on behalf of the Natural Resource Department, and we have Chris Doty for the Road Department online. We are requesting the approval of 2 grant proposals for the Central Oregon Landscape Resiliency Project and the Community Wildfire Defense Grant. The first grant I would like to speak about is the Central Oregon Landscape Resiliency Project. This was a program that was introduced through Senate Bill 762 with available funding. It is administered through the Oregon Department of Forestry. In 2022, there was the Central Oregon Landscape Resiliency Project was created and was awarded $5.8 million, which was distributed to 16 partner organizations throughout Central Oregon. That agreement ended in June of 2023, and there is actually a new proposal that has been put together. The previous proposal was actually put together through the Deschutes County Natural Resource Department, and the new proposal is put together through the Central Oregon Shared Stewardship Alliance. The new request for the Central Oregon Landscape Resiliency Project is $7.2 million with a distribution of 19 partners involving a total of 20,888 acres of treatment. The Deschutes County, being one of those partners, is requesting $1.2 million in funding. I apologize. That's I think you have 1.25 on your statement. I did not incorporate the indirect costs, but the actual amount is 1.29 million in funding for 2 private landowners, 1 community, Squaw Creek Estates, and 1,639 acres of land owned by Deschutes County for a total of 2,274 acres of treatment. I can break that down for you if you'd like. So essentially for the Deschutes County request, we have 41 acres that's being requested for Squaw Creek Canyon Estates of juniper thinning and brush removal. Keith Cyrus, which is a property owner in Cloverdale, is requesting juniper encroachment, so juniper thinning, a total of 80 acres. John Shepard is a property owner in between Sisters and Redmond, which is requesting 110 acres of treatment of juniper thinning. We are also on county land requesting 404 acres of prescribed fire underburning in the Deschutes Canyon or Deschutes County Fremont Canyon area. And then we also have 1,161 acres of juniper thinning requested in the Sisters area on Deschutes County property, and 478 acres of thinning requested in the Lapine area. And that which totals the total of 2,274 acres of treatment. Do you have any questions on this grant application at this time?
Kevin, you know how happy that makes me.
Yeah, I could hear it. I could hear it ringing.
So, yeah, thank you.
Kevin, I'm curious how the kind of larger private land holdings get how attached to us, that is it, I believe that the way that this ran last year, there was, I thought it was ODF who sort of sponsored some large private land holdings, kind of brought those under into a package. So this year is that more spread out? There's several sponsors of private landowners in the mix here, or?
Yes, that's correct. We have quite a few private landowners. It really had to do with, having a fiscal sponsor was pretty much the main reason for taking on private landowners. So if communities or landowners had the ability to be a fiscal sponsor, we encouraged them to apply on their own. We did take on a couple landowners, but there were other organizations that also took on doing treatments for private landowners. And we just kind of tried to distribute the capacity of what we could accomplish. These two private landowners requested potential treatments early on in the process, and I was considering utilizing grants like the Buttes to Basin Agreement or the BLM Community Assistance Agreement. I felt there wasn't quite the funding available to accomplish the goals for these two landowners, and that's why I pursued a larger landscape type project that we have here.
Okay, so these were entities you were already considering trying to support with Joint Chiefs funding.
Yes.
Or other funding, but this was a better opportunity.
It was a better opportunity. It was more landscape scale. It incorporated ecological restoration, not necessarily fire fuel reduction. And that's where I'm trying to incorporate juniper thinning on a lot of our county property land as well.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, and not only if we did receive the funding for this grant, that opens up that opportunity for more community members to be to have that funding for the BLM and the Buttes to Basin funding.
Mm-hmm. And I believe last year there was a very substantial amount of leverage offered along with the application from all these partners, including a lot of federal land work. Do you have a sense of, for this $7.2 million requested, what kind of leverage these 19 partners are bringing forward for this application?
Yeah, so just the combination of partnering together to look at it on a landscape scale provides leverage, but we also have the U.S. Forest Service and the BLM providing match for the project as well, providing a total of I believe it was up to $960,000 for the land management, and I don't have it in the Forest Service, but it was a considerable amount for the Forest Service as well that was providing a match for the project. And that was essentially our leverage, is that we were working all together to try and treat the Central Oregon on a landscape scale.
Right. Yeah. The last cycle from the Forest Service component, I thought was the match that they were offering was several $1 million.
Yes, I believe
of work on federal land. So that's funds that come through the Joint Chiefs program or the Collaborative Forest Landscape Restoration program or this new wildfire crisis strategy. So just to emphasize I want to just re-emphasize for my commissioners, our community being very competitive for federal funds being spent on federal lands is allowing us, is probably constituting the vast majority of the match that we are offering up to get state money to treat private lands and, in our case, local government lands.
Which means more juniper removal.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Who could have thought?
But just to reemphasize the importance of us continuing to advocate for federal programs on federal lands because of the synergy and the spillover effects.
So you mentioned capacity of what can be accomplished. This is certified contractor pool projects. I'm just, I'm thinking who's doing the work out there?
Yeah, so these would be probably most likely larger contracts that we would put together. So, we would not only, invite anyone on our qualified pool, but probably even more broadly look throughout Oregon for potential contractors to be able to treat it this scale. But, any certified contractor.
Yeah, and because of the substantial influx of money under the wildfire crisis strategy on the Deschutes National Forest, I think they're finding that the local contractor community is stretched, and as a result is requesting much higher rates for that contract work. So I don't know of whether I hope that as his application was being put together, there was real-time information from local contractors being incorporated into the cost estimates.
Yes, we did try and, estimate as best we could with current rates that we've had, throughout the year, but that's always a difficult task to try and estimate what the current rates will be when we do request that contract.
Yeah.
When I just think of the capacity, even, having enough fully functioning companies working for a profit, having employees and equipment to be able to do this. So it's kind of a call to the small business owners or motivated entrepreneurs to really spin up.
Yeah. I agree. I would love to see this be, result in a long-term expansion of capacity, but the investments that these contractors need to make can be very chunky. So if a piece of large equipment costs $700,000, and you're not sure whether the state money is going to keep coming every year, it can be really hard to make that decision to make that very large investment to go from 2 logging sides to 3 logging sides without any certainty that the work will keep flowing. So.
Well, there's a lot of trees on the landscape.
Yeah.
Yes, there are.
Great. So there's a 2-part ask here. So this is the Central Oregon Landscape Resiliency Grant Project. So I guess just putting in perspective, this is in front of the Board of Commissioners of Deschutes County, and this is all projects in Deschutes County. Is there other kind of Central Oregon or Tri-County efforts happening here? Or it's just out of the domain of what we're talking about?
For the Central Oregon Landscape Resiliency Project that was put together, it involves 3 counties: Jefferson, Deschutes, and Klamath County. We have projects all the way from Warm Springs Reservation down to the Gilcrest area, and a myriad of private landowners, communities, local government, nonprofits, a pretty wide array of organizations involved in the
Right.
project.
Kind of the same concept of the bridge program, right? There's need everywhere, and we're getting in a good Central Oregon footprint on this effort. So that's great.
Yeah.
Can you, when there's a final application, and I hope there'll be a map of where all the sites are. Could you share that with us?
Yes, we will. That is going to be a request of the project. We do have an initial shapefile layer of where all the projects are located right now. We're still trying to populate it with accurate information, but once it's awarded, that will be a request, and something we will have readily available is not only a shapefile but a map available of where all those projects will be.
Yeah, and if you could, at the same time, kind of dig in the archives and send us the map from the last cycle. It'd be really interesting to see the total impact of these proposed projects plus the acres that were already completed from the last cycle's funding, and because over time it does add up. I mean, I know we have tens or hundreds of millions of dollars of work that needs to be done on the landscape, but we're chipping away at it, and it's neat to see the spatial layout of that.
Yes, I think that request can be provided. The Oregon Department of Forestry actually does have an application online that has that information on the last proposal and where the treatments occurred.
So that'll be part of the products sooner or later. Good. And then Chris Doty. Or
Yeah, I
Speaking
can,
for both of them, sorry, I didn't.
I can speak on
Okay, yep.
behalf, essentially on the second one. So the Community Wildfire Defense Grant is a federal grant administered through the U.S. Forest Service. You know, essentially, we're looking at trying to bolster the road department program on doing right-of-way treatments within the county. We're requesting a total of $348,000 on this request, which would be $308,000 of treatment and $40,000 for a masticator head to do brush removal. The treatments would essentially be tree removal along right-of-ways. We've used the vulnerability index to identify areas of most need, and we identified the Lapine area where we'd like to propose our funding. This will be in conjunction, the Oregon Department of Forestry will be leading up this grant application, and we will be a partner in that. And essentially, the first round of funding was not awarded when we applied last time, and the feedback that we got that the proposal was too broad, it was too large, and too many types of actions. So we really tried to limit the actions that we're requesting and the locations that we're requesting the funding.
Great.
And then I can open that up for questions or questions for Chris at this time.
So yeah, there's a map provided. Could you put a little bit more context about what we might see on the ground, Chris?
Yeah, so within that hatched area, that's considered the underserved portion where the grant criteria applies. There's a little over 30 miles of road in there. Every county road is an evacuation route, potentially for somebody. And so what we'll be doing is contracting for clearing of vegetation within the right of way, probably a little more aggressively, given the wildfire evacuation route component, rather than what we would typically do in terms of road spray to keep weeds off shoulders, et cetera. So this funding would be used to mostly contract out that work in that area. And then again, there's the masticator head that we would use for our clearing efforts, which would also act as the match component of this grant as well.
The one question that comes to mind when we're pulling out a small, medium-sized tree at the edge of a road, is it just cut off at the stump, or is the stump removed?
We would want to remove stumps as well. So that would be a part of what we would contract and or.
Yep. So it's just not just dropping a tree, but it truly is opening up that right of way and removing the stump in the ground.
Correct.
Well, so then backtracking, is juniper just cut at the ground level, or are stumps removed?
Generally, stumps are removed as low as possible. It depends on the removal. If it's a chainsaw or mechanical removal, on how low you can get stumps to be removed. I think the objective is usually 4 inches of removal, more for safety reasons than anything else. Follow-up treatments actually would include herbicide for future infill of conifers, which is a much more effective process than trying to manually cut them as they grow up over time.
Great.
So I'm tracking that this work along these roads will be very helpful for maintaining access and egress into this part of South County. Is the work being done? I mean, does the right of way wide enough, and is the amount of vegetation work substantial enough that these could actually function as fuel breaks in fire suppression activities as well, or would that require a much wider zone of vegetation management?
I would not necessarily call these fuel breaks. I would just call it more of allowing emergency response to respond to emergencies much easier. It opens up the vegetation. They don't have walls of brush and trees right next to the roads. to do something like you're talking about, essentially like a shaded fuel break, which happened up at the Peaks Lake fire, you're looking at probably more a thinning treatment, more 100 to 200 feet from the roadside.
Significantly wider than this.
Yes.
Which is private property usually at that point, which
Yes.
can be done by the property owners, but even our best efforts, not everybody's going to get there.
Yeah.
So as I say, when I think of that, especially Southern Deschutes County, it's the culture of the community, you know, the community, and this is what Project Wildfire has been about for 20 something years now. You know, let's look at the landscape. Let's understand the lay of the land. You know, some people like to live behind that wall of small trees, but when you think of a hot wind driven event, fire event, all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait a minute, maybe I need to open this up a little bit. So kind of getting the culture of resiliency in the community. Great.
So Kevin, what's going to be done with the trees when they are cut down?
For which project?
The one in South County,
The road?
right? The road cleanup. Do they take it away?
My assumptions is it's most likely either masticated or chipped and processed and then taken to whatever facility or transfer site it would be taken to.
Part of the contract. It'll be
Yeah.
negotiated as part of the contract.
Correct.
Okay.
We need two motions
I
or?
mean, there is, I mean, whole tree chip like that. I, you know, I don't know of anywhere that wants that or is using that right now. So would it go, are we talking about it going to the landfill then, or?
And Chris might be able to speak more on this, but you know, there is the potential it could be chipped on site as well. So I'm not exactly clear on what the processing would be, but those would be the options, that it would be taken to a landfill or transfer site. It could be chipped and spread on site, or masticated and spread on site as well.
No, another reason for us to make sure our composting operation is scaled appropriately for our community. Chris, did you have any comments about what happens to those trees that are removed?
No, I think that was answered correctly. If trees are of size, the tree is actually offered to the adjacent property owner if it's merchantable timber for firewood purposes. But usually what we're dealing with are very small trees that just grow like wildfire, you know, in South County, and like Kevin mentioned and was discussed, they're pulverized and usually hauled to the not landfill site within their chip pile.
So that reminds me, another item for the board is a possible letter of support for Primeville biomass. So that may be, yeah, let's discuss that right after a vote here, and just real quick as another item.
I mean, this is, you know, we're also talking about material that when the Mount Bachelor biomass facility is completed, and I believe they're going to break ground soon.
Those are going to be.
That'll take close to 1,000 tons of chip per year.
Exciting.
So of whole tree chip like we're talking about.
So is there a motion?
Move approval of the submittal of proposals for the Central Oregon Landscape Resiliency Project Grant Program and the Community Wildfire Defense Grant Program.
I'll second the motions.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
and Chair Burns. So as I say, I did attend that CREA meeting in Primeville a week or two ago, and there was in passing, I just remembered about it, letter of support for Primeville biomass. So my request is, if there's support, to maybe call city manager of Primeville or your counterpart in Crook County and say, who might we send a letter to if there's support? You know, because there's same market conditions as Lapine project many years, is needs to be subsidized or funded up front to justify it and whatever. So whatever we might want to put on paper is what I'm proposing.
Definitely we should do this. And I know Governor Kotek is really for it. So if we can get ahead of the short session, that would be
Was there
advantageous.
support for asking Kevin to kind of get that started?
I'm hesitant to provide kind of broad blanket support, if, you know, they're going to be seeking all kinds of subsidies to make this happen, and certain kinds of subsidies I think are appropriate, and certain kinds of subsidies I think actually, you know, impact or take resources away from other things. You know, for example, you know, most biomass power plant proposals that we've seen in this region are basically asking for the Forest Service to not just give them the material for free at the landing, but to use federal tax dollars to chip and haul the material and deliver it to the facility for free. And if you're using federal tax dollars to do that, then it means we are able to treat less acres. And so I'm not supportive of those kinds of subsidies for a biomass project. I also, you know, from all the years of research I've done on biomass power projects, you know, I would also want to know that this is going to be a combined heat and power facility that would very efficiently make use of the feedstock material to convert it to energy. I mean, you know, the efficiency of a standalone biomass power plant is, you know, 20, 30, 40%. So, you know, every potential bit of energy in a stick of wood is very inefficiently used. Combined heat and power facility can go up to 80 or 90% efficiency. And, you know, we need to be thinking about the carbon emissions per energy created. Like, I am supportive of, you know, burning wood and creating carbon emissions when it's in a high efficiency energy application, but I'm not supportive of lower efficiency energy applications. So
Is there support to look into this and see if there's a letter that we would agree upon? That's kind of, because I understand all that also.
I think I would want to
Just look into it.
I think rather what I would like to see is case by case requests for letters of support. You know, we are applying to this grant program, we're applying for this credit, rather than like, I don't see any, I'm not comfortable with a blanket letter of support.
Okay. So how about asking Kevin, as our county forester involved with this, to make a relationship, just have a phone call with city manager. I think Steve Forrester is going to be on the lead on this, and just ask that information. That's exactly where I'm at. I'm, you know, we don't know what the big picture is, but there may be a part that we could advocate for, or, you know, put some input on. Okay. Yeah. So that's kind of another item, but yeah, I'll get you his phone number if you don't have it. I don't know if you've talked to city manager in Prineville.
Is Chris Doty still on? He's still part of the conversation now.
I'm here.
There he is.
Chris, can you please let ODOT know that there are a lot of dead trees when I drive down the highways, 126, et cetera, a lot of really dead trees. And I had turned them in like a year ago and they said they have to evaluate. You know, I feel like if we have any major windstorms, some of those trees, and, you know, if we continue to get rain, some of these trees are going to be weakened. So yes, remember like a year ago, we had 5 people killed 1 week in Oregon because they were killed by falling trees. So if we could like remind ODOT,
Sure.
that it would be
And
nice if we
perhaps I'll reach out and try to get more specificity to those locations.
Okay.
So I can call
I'll send you
them.
pictures.
Okay, that sounds great.
That's what I
I'll,
did with
touch
Gary.
base.
I kept sending him pictures like, Gary, when are we going to get rid of these trees? So yeah, there's some, you know, incredibly tall, dead trees that I drive by.
Great. Yep. We'll talk soon.
Thank you,
Okay,
Chris.
thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, commissioners, for your time.
Thank you for that report, Kevin.
So I didn't mention this earlier, but item number 13 is being pulled from the agenda. Is that correct? Or is there any discussion? Oh, okay. Well, so item number 13 for discussion still then. This has been a consideration to hear an appeal of hearings officer decision approving land use applications for Redmond Water Pollution Control Facility Effluent and Biosolids Disposal Complex.
Good morning. Thanks, Chair DeBonne. Good morning, Commissioners. Yeah, as you noted, Chair DeBonne, this was a appeal that the county received of a hearings officer approval, but late yesterday afternoon, we received a withdrawal of that appeal application. So no further action on the board. The hearings officer decision will stand and constitutes the county's final decision. It sounds like the city and that appellant were able to reach a good compromise. So.
Great. Well, yeah, this is a big project, next generation of wastewater disposal, pollution control for the city of Redmond. Any other comments?
Glad to hear it was resolved. I mean, we were, in my opinion, we were not going to be able to hear this anyway, because we have a stake in the development of that constructed wastewater treatment wetland and that treatment facility. But it's really good to hear that the city and the appellant have sorted things out.
Yes, thank you, Haley, for that good news.
Thank you very much.
I actually have the next item.
Okay, good. Here we go. Good. So you're not going to leave us.
See here.
Item number 14, consideration of a document rendering a final county decision approving conditional use permit to establish manufactured home as a secondary accessory farm dwelling.
Thank you. And again, I failed to say this earlier, but again, for the record, I'm Hallie King, Associate Planner with Community Development. And this application, or I'm sorry, this item is a draft decision review for the conditional use permit for the secondary accessory farm dwelling at 19825 Conarn Road. And as the board recalls, we had a hearing on this on August 9th. And the board also deliberated on August 9th, rendering a unanimous approval of the application, reversing the hearings officer denial. And so we've brought a draft decision forth, reflecting the board's direction at that hearing. And I'm happy to answer any questions or if there's any edits to that decision. But if none, we would look for the board to make a motion to authorize signatures on the decision.
Hallie, I know we had some discussion about precedent with this decision, kind of the ability for others to get this is Class A manufactured home approved as a secondary accessory farm dwelling. Can you remind me of the, like, I should have looked at my notes, prior to coming down here, but can you just rehash that discussion of kind of how much of a precedent this sets?
Yeah, and I think
for me.
Okay, well, I think we don't see these applications really with a lot of regularity. This is the first one we've seen since the early 90s. So I don't know to what extent it'll set a big precedent. But well, I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that, but really we think it's a product of the code just has evolved over time and likely was unintended to restrict or to preclude folks from using a Class A, where we think the code actually has a broader effect in wanting to give folks these additional housing options for this type of a dwelling.
And the intention is for farm workforce to
Correct.
be able to inhabit these dwellings.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we learned a lot about a Class A, B, and C manufactured home, and but the definition of that's for sure.
Yep.
I did have a question. I don't know if you or Will can answer this, but item number B on the decision with the approval, and it says prior to the initiation of use, necessary permits from the on-site wastewater division. So that will be required, correct?
Correct. Yeah, I believe they'll need to either get an authorization notice or explore a new septic. But yes, they're in talks with our septic team of getting the correct permits for the.
Okay, I was actually happy to see that. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, document number 2023-880.
Are we ready for a motion then?
If we are.
Okay, move approval of board signature of document number 2023-880, rendering a final county decision on file number 247-23-000162 CU 516A, approving a conditional use permit to establish a manufactured home as a secondary accessory farm dwelling at 19825 Connor Road, Bend.
Second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. Holly.
So now we're a good half hour ahead here. Item number 15, Deschutes County Adult Parole and Probation Community Corrections Plan. Thanks for being with us.
Good morning. For the record, D.V. Holcomb, Deschutes County Community Justice Director.
My name is Trevor Stevens. I'm the Deschutes County Community Justice Business Manager.
We would like to speak with you today and ask for your review and approval of Deschutes document 2023-2025, I believe, which is the Community Corrections Plan, as well as the intergovernmental agreement that would accompany the plan. Next slide, please.
There we go.
So really quick presentation. We have had your great support all these years, and I know that you know the gist of what's happening. Do we do it?
Yeah.
Okay. But I mean, basically, just to summarize, the Community Corrections Plan is meant to describe the totality of activity that's happening with adult clients on supervision for primarily felony offenses, some specified misdemeanor offenses. And in our county, due to your support, some misdemeanor offenses that the county or the state, won't reimburse us for or pay us for, but that have been identified as a county priority. Those are sexual offenses and domestic violence offenses. So this plan kind of describes everything that goes into what we do at Adult Parole and Probation. The plan is meant to support kind of our philosophy and vision, which is, every decision each day should kind of be based in what is the impact on public safety, what accountability is needed here, external, internal, and how can the ground be laid for long-term behavior change. So ideally, that's what we would do with every single decision, every single person, every single day. Sometimes, one of these priorities lands higher than others, and that's what we make decisions on. But ideally, we're looking at the totality, and that's because this is what Oregon legislature says we need to do with these plans, and we believe in them.
Well, and it's good for the community too.
Yes, exactly. There's a reason.
Mhm.
So what we provide are supervision services and sanctions. What does that mean? Again, I think you all know a lot about this, but just to kind of ground us in this again today. So supervision is what do we do with individuals? And we do and work with individuals based on what's called criminogenic risk. What is their risk to commit crime or to commit a new crime? We also look at what are their criminogenic needs, which is kind of like behind the behavior, what is driving that behavior? It's different for different people. And then finally, this very jargony term called responsivity, but that is trying to recognize that each person learns differently, comes from a different background, has a different frame of reference. And when we can match that, then we have a better likelihood of success with that individual. That's what responsivity means. We try to teach accountability as well as hold people accountable. And teaching accountability are those sort of long-term behavior changes, changing ways of thinking to help people take responsibility for themselves so that others do not have to do that. We see clients routinely in a bunch of different settings. We require folks to come to our office, and our staff go out to home visits, which is not an entirely, common practice in a lot of other human service or even public safety fields. That's a proactive home visit, not just responding to something. So that's the supervision piece. That's really our POs with clients or other kinds of specialist staff who work directly with clients. In terms of services, these tend to be things that in our budget would fall under materials and services. Housing, that comes in the form of a tremendous amount of housing subsidy requests and offers. We can talk about that in a second. Treatment, cognitive behavioral treatment, as well as referrals out and supporting people to get substance use treatment. That can include polygraphs, primarily for our sexual offending population, sometimes with domestic violence population. Employment services, how can we bolster folks' abilities, life skills, job skills, and ability to stay on the job as they need to. And then those barrier reduction services. So this might include things like, maybe deep poverty, inability to get materials to get to a work site, perhaps providing a positive pro-social outlet for leisure time to help people move away from a negative peer group to a better peer group, that kind of thing. And then sanctions. So that's kind of the last one. It's, I think, often what we tend to think of with parole and probation, but it's not a huge amount of our activity. But that's when we have to provide that external accountability because the person has showed that at that time they are unable to take responsibility for themselves in terms of public safety or adhering to their conditions. And ultimately, we can also get into the field of revocation. And revocation is kind of the end of the road, at least at that moment in time, for parole and probation when somebody is revoked back to jail or worst case scenario, revoked back to prison for a certain amount of time. But keep in mind, about 95% of people do come back eventually. So it's more of a circle than a road, I guess. So I'll stop. Any questions on any of these terms or things? These are.
I have some questions,
Yeah.
Stevie. Okay, you said approximately 1,000 people that are in your program, 1,000? Okay, so I'm wondering, the officer and the specialist, do they each have clients then? If the 26.75, do both of those different divisions have clients that they're responsible for?
Which divisions?
Okay, so you have the officer, parole and probation officer, 23 of them.
Mhm.
And then you have the parole and probation specialist, 3.75. So what I'm wondering, if you have 1,000 people that you're watching out for, that means there's like 37 people per employee. Is that about right?
The specialists do not have a caseload in that.
They have no caseload that.
Just the POs. The
Okay.
specialists will come and they tend to offer either ancillary support or they provide cognitive behavioral groups. So those are of individuals who are on somebody else's caseload.
Okay, so that means, and then they've got more than 37.
Yes.
Yeah.
Our average caseload for POs is between 40 and 45 right now.
Okay. All right. So you said in here that a quarter of them have substance use disorder treatment.
Mhm.
Pfeiffer was mentioned.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering if that's 250 people, does Pfeiffer really have the capacity to help those 250 people?
I would certainly prefer that Pfeiffer could answer that for themselves. I mean, from our perspective though, they do a really good job with what they have. But Trevor was actually just sharing with me that their recovery mentors are really low. Like they've got one male recovery mentor at this
Yeah.
point.
They've been experiencing many of the staffing challenges that we've heard other agencies have. So right now they're down to like a 0.5 male recovery mentor. And with recovery mentor services, it is preferred that the gender match that of the gender of the identified person. And so, I mean, there's just those things that we're dealing with. And then of those 250, some may not go to Pfeiffer. They may, because for treatment, it is a choice of where they want to go. We contract with Pfeiffer because they provide our sober housing beds. But some individuals may say, oh, I want to go to Best Care, or hey, I want to go to Serenity Lane. So they may go to other services. So not all of those individuals actually have to go to Pfeiffer, but Pfeiffer is one of our main providers and they work really well with our clients and they have experience with our clients. So that's why we really focus on them in order to try to get some of the high risk, high needs individuals that need those beds and need those treatment services specifically for that service.
Can you guys remind me how many people can be helped at Oxford House then? At Oxford House, how many people can stay there?
So there's 13 Oxford houses in Central Oregon.
And what about in Deschutes County?
So between Bend and Redmond, there's 13 of them.
13 here. Okay.
And so we don't contract with any Oxford houses because they contract with themselves. They manage their own houses through their organization that kind of operates, I think, out of Washington, DC. So they work with the individual landlords, but many of our clients utilize those Oxford houses. So, and those are more of that, as DB mentioned, those individual rent subsidies that we provide, like 350 to 650 usually is that average range for those individuals that we provide those housing funding to kind of really help support them and get them going. So
are they limited to like 16 beds at a or 8 beds, or what's their 13?
All over the board, because depending on the size of the house and how many people they put in a room, some of them will put 4 to 6 people in a room with a used bunk beds. Other ones, they have rooms that accommodate individuals that maybe have a child. And so those ones will be just that person and the child. So it's really all over the board, just depending on the size of the house and what's available. So.
Okay, that helps a bit.
Yeah, it's very grassroots thing. I mean, there's no organizational chart or no description of what exactly is available in those houses. It just sort of seems to work organically.
Well, what I couldn't believe a couple of years ago when we were really diving into this is that there were so many people on parole that were domestic violence that have come back. So you just see them every week. Is that what you do?
I mean, the supervision contact requirements are based on risk level. I mean, in general, we're working only with medium or high risk individuals, but it could be 2 times a month, it could be 3 times a month, plus a home visit, kind of really depends.
And they will likely have treatment obligations in there as well, VIP or DVIP, and that is a weekly treatment requirement that they're usually required to attend.
Yeah. Maybe move on. Thanks for those questions. Just want to thank you all showed up and came to our open house at Parole and Probation. These are just a couple fun pictures from that. Appreciate you attending. And everybody showed up, Commissioner.
Yeah,
Well,
some sooner than
uh,
and some later.
and it's always good to have a project completed. Hopefully we're right sized for the service level at this point in time. Obviously, Deschutes County is still a growing community and different things are happening, but we got you some elbow room and some space to do your business.
Did greatly appreciated. Came into use very much yesterday with a client who was going through a really difficult time. Just having some additional space to work with that person was very helpful.
Now, on the domestic violence treatment page, it says monthly average to be served at 75. To me, that seems really low from what we were dealing with prior to COVID. And then I know COVID, a lot of domestic violence happened during that period of time.
If that's the average, so over the entire year, the people may be at different points so some of them maybe have completed or some of them haven't completed. So that's just the average over the year period of how many people will be in services at that point. And so some of those individuals have likely already completed treatment, or they haven't got to the point where they've moved into that treatment yet.
Yeah. It does remain though one of the crime types that we're seeing an increase, or certainly maintaining at an elevated state compared to some others.
Thanks, Trevor.
No worries.
All right. So, I mean, if you think about the activities and the requirements of our industry and field and what the people of Oregon expect of us, I want to just put a plug in for our very dedicated and talented staff. I think we're doing really well. If who you work with and how you work with them is based on risk assessment, getting a good timely risk assessment is important. And we do that. About 75% of our folks get a pretty intensive criminogenic risk and needs assessment within 60 days. That's pretty great and new-ish to our field, last 5 years or so. You need to work with folks in a way that addresses the roots of behavior, not just responding to crises. That requires something in our system called a behavior change plan, a case plan that really identifies in an orderly way what you're working on in a proactive way. And about 75% of our folks have active and updated BCPs, as we call them, which is another indicator of great work. Treatment engagement is very, very tough. Not just substance use, but all manner of treatment engagement. And about 47% of our folks are involved in treatment, which is not as many as are required and needed, but that's the percentage at which we're able to. And that's actually much higher than the statewide average, which is about 33%, I believe. So very interesting. We'll talk, maybe Trevor will talk about this in a little, because this is something that's really in jeopardy with our primary state funding this biennium. But we do an excellent job at providing some barrier removing supports, and you all know the story of housing in Central Oregon. So a lot of our materials and services budget, grant funding, everything we can do to get some funding to support people to get initial month's rent, 2 months rent, get people back on their feet after releasing from prison in particular. Gets even harder when those folks have, conditions that prohibit them from being around others, or, are perceived or very much are dangerous. So this is a really, really important one. A lot of folks coming out of prison and on probation are at the lower end of the socioeconomic scale, and affording treatment, which is required, is a barrier. So if you can't afford it, you can't go, then you fail, right? It's just sort of a cycle. So it's a really, really important piece of our model. And then, I mean, to what end? Ultimately, what is the goal here? For us, the community, really, it's always recidivism at the end of the day. Are we getting people to behave more safely and not harm others? The state of Oregon over the last 10 years, as you're aware, also has had a goal of reducing prison costs and reducing the need to build more prisons. So that has come down right on the shoulders of community corrections and our communities. And we have done a really good job. Since 2016, I think our prison utilization is down 20%.
But there's actually a couple hundred more prisoners at Deer Ridge than when I looked at it a couple of years ago.
There are a couple hundred.
Yeah, it's up to 1,000 and it was like 784 or something when I saw it 2 years ago.
Yeah, the figure certainly, I mean, goes like this even with us, but since the state set this baseline of, we can't as a state go above this number, or we're going to have to look at new prisons or opening up wings of prisons that have been closed. The state has in general has stayed under that, and Deschutes County has definitely stayed under that. Now, that said, we're a smaller county. We don't contribute hugely to statewide decisions, but we're held to the same requirement as if we were responsible for 50% of the population, right? So it doesn't really matter. So
Davy, I'm just curious, have you guys had anybody that have graduated from the welding program at Dare Ridge that you've worked with yet? I'm not sure how long that program's been in existence.
I'm not aware if we do.
Yeah, and I'm not aware either, but I can definitely look into it and see if I can.
Because I was talking to the inmates in July when I was there, and what an opportunity for them. I mean, they can leave with a family wage job, and in fact, I'm meeting tomorrow with COCC. If they can double that operation, it's right now it's 12 inmates, but if we could double it and then add plumbing and electrical too, it would really, I believe, would be helpful to the success of someone coming out of prison and actually having a job.
And build houses.
Right. And build houses, which we desperately need. So
I think that's there's a real big gap, especially for people coming out of prison who are highly motivated, who they've gone through that change process. They are fully ready, by body, mind, and spirit to move forward in the right direction. We just don't have a lot of great landing places for them that can cohesively say, all right, you're ready to go. Here's some barriers. Here's some skill. It's a real gap. We tend to get caught up with those coming out of prison who are not in that headspace yet, right? Because that's sort of back to that push to be reactive constantly. But we really do need programs that are more proactive in that.
Well, just talking to them, I was, this can change their life.
Mhm.
And if they were selected, I think that's incredibly important.
Yeah.
We do have a few individuals just recently, because I just processed one of the funding requests, so I remember seeing it. There's a program out of Prineville that trains individuals to operate heavy equipment. And we have two AIP individuals, their alternative to incarceration program. So they're directly releasing from prison. They have been accepted into that program and are going to that program. So I have seen that, so I can vouch for that. And it sounds like that has been fairly successful in there. They're obviously working directly with the prison, because those individuals are, when they release, they're out for a week and then they're into that program. So that program is definitely connected with the prisons to make sure that that's been made aware of how that works.
So what is the potential? How many people can do that?
I need to look. I just saw one come across because I was processing the funding request, so I can look into that. I noted it because it was an interesting thing just to see that working. So I will definitely kind of look into that and see what more information I can find about that.
Great. Thanks, Trevor.
Okay, so let's see, is this before yours? Okay. So the budget that is in the community corrections plan in the beginning section of your document that you have is obviously less than last biennium. This is this massive budget cut we took from the state. Recall, please, that our county's allocation is split between parole and probation at 80% and then the jail at 20%. This budget includes all of that because it's the whole plan. But for us, what this has translated into, so what we're kind of looking at this year, and I think you're aware, I will be supporting the Community Corrections Association tomorrow in front of the Legislative Days House Judiciary to talk sort of about what this impact has meant to Deschutes.
That was today, but yeah, we know that's coming.
Yes, today is Senate and tomorrow's.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So budget impacts, we have of those at 23 POs and 3.75 specialists. We actually have 5 FTE that we have frozen. We do not plan to fill. We cannot fill.
I was going to ask you because I was looking it up. Okay, so they are frozen.
They are frozen, about 12.5% of the workforce, which, that's anything get around 10% and above is just very, very meaningful. So we're kind of just seeing what that means. And really, honestly, it's this constant uphill battle against reverting back to crisis management instead of case management. Everybody's covering everybody. We have people covering people that are covering people to try to get things done. And that includes Trevor and myself. That risk assessment is just harder when the caseload goes up or you're covering things for other people. It's harder to think ahead, be proactive, get the risk assessment. So then you begin, again, just to kind of rely on crisis response instead of proactive work. Innovation and improvement. I mean, the people of Oregon constantly ask our field to do better, to see people more, to not see people we shouldn't see, to provide services in a particular way. All of that takes learning, takes training, takes coaching. And when you're in this other kind of stance of just crisis management, that stuff gets harder and harder. We still keep a huge value on innovation through your support with the opioid settlement money, which, for example, is not included in this budget because that came afterward. That's kind of just an example that's continuing to try to be creative and find ways to help people and get our job done. But that gets harder, and it just has been harder. And then finally, I mean, services and harm reparation. One of the impacts has been, it's a little bit complicated, but our budget used to provide a little bit of funding, actually half of the funding for the community service crew that is housed at juvenile, but 2 days a week was providing community service crew work for adults. So 50% adults, 50% juvenile. So adult parole and probation paid juvenile, to have that work done. We had to cut that 100%, which has reduced by at least one full day, at the very least, the amount of community service crew work offered to adults, because that, we're no longer supporting to do that. So that's one example. And different kinds of services provision, that's where we had to take kind of the biggest cut per capita of client, if you will. So we're really going to see some differences there. And kind of the specifics are right there. So we have been used to providing treatment cost subsidies, and we've had to reduce those by 63%. The cognitive behavioral programs that the specialists do, one of those frozen FTEs is a specialist. So we can, cut in half our ability to do it, but it's resulting in a 42% cut in our availability for clients to come and do the behavior change work they need to do. And then, like I said, the 100% cut in community service funding. So just quickly, and I hope you've seen this material, but tomorrow what we will be talking about in partnership with the Community Corrections Association is that we are asking the legislature for a second year of this biennium, a $16 million infusion to prevent the cuts that I've just described from becoming permanent. You can imagine in other counties that are testifying, I think they've lost 30 FTE. It's just this huge, significant number. And then the other piece that we're asking for is for the state to fund the actual cost of doing the work, which is it's relatively simple. Do a survey. How much does each county cost to do the work that's necessary? Then please fund that at the actual cost, to some extent, plus or minus. Instead, it's funded through a very kind of antiquated, complex, and lag time capita-based model that just has never reflected our work. So that's the ask to the legislature tomorrow that you will see from us. And this really reflects what the other community corrections are.
How does the business of the legislature go then? So these are interim days, House and Senate committees meetings, but can they make a financial decision, or does that go to the emergency board, which is the people that
they have those options to
Okay,
do one or the
yes.
other? I think our thought is likely that they will just wait until the beginning of the new session and fund it during session.
Okay, so it's really just setting the groundwork for quick action when they come in February.
Yes, and I've heard that there is some support to look at the funding model, which really long-term is the big ask. But this infusion next year is crucial because I don't know if you recall us in different lipstick presentations, there's this trough that we're in of clients took a cut during the pandemic, right? The number of folks coming in dropped, caseloads went way down temporarily, then the funding model is based on that trough. But now we're coming back up, and we're just going to keep going back up, or at least plateau. We're being funded way back here. So, we need something that matches what the actual costs are. So that's the big ask, which will definitely be a longer term conversation.
There's about 35 commissioners at a retreat Friday this last week, and it was one of the discussion items. So everybody that was there sure heard about this too.
Oh, good. Yeah, I think, it didn't get a lot of priority attention last session. Various reasons, I suppose, but it does seem as if there's some momentum happening.
Can you remind us what the relevant committees and the legislature are that will be addressing this?
Which bodies?
Yeah, which committees within the legislature are you?
Judiciary. Yeah, so today I think is the Senate Judiciary, tomorrow is the House Judiciary. So Deschutes has been put on the House Judiciary, chairing that committee.
So if we wanted to, it would be helpful if you could share with us who the committee members are, both at the Senate and the House level. Obviously in the House Judiciary Committee, we have a potential champion with Representative Kropf, but at the Senate level, it'd be good to know who the people are who we should be talking to.
Certainly.
And, maybe we could write a letter or do something, prior to the short session starting.
Wonderful.
Did we already do that? Did we already?
We did, I think, a couple letters last full session.
Okay.
When we were asking for a funding that kind of matched what the prior biennium was.
Always good to refresh.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
before the new short session starts. So, okay.
Yeah, thank you. Make sure and do that.
And just to quickly go over, on your screen, you should be able to see a copy of, that's the budget we submitted for the community corrections plan. And it just shows, it requires you to break the funding up into 12 different categories. And you can just see some of the percentage changes that we've experienced just with between the two past bienniums, and just highlighting some of those areas where we made those major reductions, as DB mentioned. And so overall, we will, for the biennium, parole and probation, will receive $10,123,151, and then 20% goes to the sheriff for custody beds. And that's that $2,024,630.20 figure as well. But I'm happy to answer any specific questions if you have about those categories or those areas, if you have any.
So the misdemeanor supervision, that's the amount that we have from county general fund, and it shows -2 is. Can you put that in perspective? I mean, didn't we at least keep up with what we were? Or did we just approve a little bit less? I don't, I'm just thinking our budget committee meeting.
Same amount,
I'm trying to think what there was. There may have been something.
maybe with pretrial.
Yeah, the pretrial money
Maybe there's-
through the crime prevention funds may have been lumped in there, and we may have pulled them out. So that may reflect why that difference is there, but I can look into that to find exactly.
Yeah, just because that, when in the proposed plan, that's exact number that we have at county general fund is that 1,072,738. Yeah, not a problem. Just acknowledging that. Well, good. And I know Public Safety Coordinating Council has reviewed this. It is a kind of a system, team sport at this point in time with public safety, multiple agencies putting people through the system and the courts, jail and prison, and then also the supervision.
Yes, we had I don't think there were any major questions or issues or concerns that arose out of the lipstick approval of the plan.
But you look at that and you go, substance use disorder, they cut it way back. Are you kidding me?
I think part of the hope is that through Measure 110, the funding would go to those agencies in our community to provide those services. We are yet to see that come to fruition, unfortunately, for our clients.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, that money is hitting the ground and is increasing treatment capacity. So what do we need to do to kind of secure some of that additional treatment capacity for your clients?
We're working with, because Best Care is one of the agencies I think received some of the most of that funding. And so we've been working with them closely, but I think they've had some delays in getting their Taylor Center, which is that center that they had specified to provide these services, off the ground and running. So those delays have definitely caused delays for our clients to get services. They have a phone number they can call, but they don't have a specific spot they can go to get those services. And so that coordination with our POs, they call that number, wait for a call back, try to figure out where the van is. I think that van also spends a lot of time out in some of the homeless camps and other areas. And so when our clients are at our office and they don't have a spot to go, it's just, there's that connection there that we're definitely having difficulty with those individuals getting access to those services.
Yeah. So
Yeah, and I think the continuum of how addiction makes an appearance and impacts people's lives. And for the client population that we have, it's really the most acute and the most complex, because at the very least, we have a combination of addiction and criminogenic thinking or behaviors that lead to crime. That's regardless of a debate about whether that use is crime or not even. So we're talking about other crime. And honestly, providers, community-based providers, even sometimes, just our partners here at the county, it's difficult to provide a range of services that matches what everybody shows up at. And ours are the most complex, often the most acute, and they present with dangerous, difficult behaviors that those systems are able to say, we're done. You called us such and such, you threw a chair, we're out. And we're like, see you tomorrow. You know, and it's a huge, increasingly to me, that's where I see the issues. I can't speak to where ballot measure 110 monies have come into the community and are helping folks who don't belong to that population. There may be lots more resources. I certainly hope so. But for ours, it has translated into, I mean, really nothing better, nothing new. If anything, just sort of more confusion and even more like mismatch between what's there and what we need.
So we're, if I understand correctly, the burn, the BHRN is really like the hub of kind of deploying those Measure 110 funds. Is community justice connected to the burn in any way?
Not formally, not structurally. We have, increasingly good and great partnerships with our health services department. But I mean, the fact that we were in front of you for the opioid settlement funding to try to get some funding to do some of the work we're talking about is a reflection that it wasn't in the burn. We weren't part of the planning process for the burn. So that's something like we were sort of after the fact understanding, oh, here's the new system, here are the new funding streams, where can we, get in? So we're doing that partnership, but not structurally. I think in the wish to help everybody upstream, which is that vision of 110, feels a little bit like downstream, where the bodies are floating, has gotten a little bit ignored. And that's where we sit. That's where we live. Sorry for that crude analysis. But.
Maybe, I mean, maybe internally at the county, we can do some work around, I know health services knows you guys and you have a good relationship, but I mean, maybe there's ways that they can help get you more formally represented in the burn, because I'm assuming that those decisions, the Measure 110 dollars, that are coming in, those are annual decisions about how to deploy those, not like this is the allocation for all time.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But I mean, in fact, again, not to keep hitting it, but the opioid settlement funding project proposal that we came with as partnership with health services, I think is going to help because it's addressing one issue, which is a specific clinician or case manager who is working with our department. And I think even just that one structural piece that you have supported, it's going to help open up a lot of doors of conversation and partnership. So thank you for that.
The county administrator team kind of make sure that these I'm not sure, I can't remember who community justice is. I know that Eric is a keeper for health services and
as well as.
Oh, okay.
But we'll coordinate. Yeah, we'll coordinate.
Assigning Eric work while he's not here. There you go.
He's not in the room.
Thank you.
Okay, so great discussion. Any more slide?
No, the slide is acting strange and it keeps wanting to go back to budget impact, which I promised you is not I don't know. We just request your approval.
Is there a final slide or?
It just says, thank you. And what
Okay.
we are requesting is a review and approval of 23-2025.
There we go.
Thank you.
Good discussion. As I say, we need to help the legislature understand the dynamics, and everybody sees parts of this big picture. This is transition for the whole state of Oregon, Measure 110, just all kinds of moving parts right now. So thank you for you and the whole department for doing what you're doing. And it helps to kind of be reminded of what it kind of looks like and feels like daily with the population you're serving.
So I move approval of the 2023-2025 Deschutes County Community Corrections Plan.
Second.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
and Chair will vote yes.
Now I'll move approval of chair signature of document number 2023-888, an intergovernmental agreement with the Department of Corrections to receive grant and aid funding.
Second.
Any other discussion?
It's the one other question about that specifically is if this effort to get the legislature to bump up the amounts in the short session is successful, would that just be an amendment to this grant aid? Okay.
Yeah.
Good to
Okay.
know that the odd ramp is there.
Yep. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Dare, and Chair will vote yes. Good discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you, commissioners.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Item number 16, Treasury Report. Thanks for joining us. And thanks for being flexible. I know this would have been the only items, Treasury and Finance on Monday, so we put it here.
Quite all right. Yeah, it worked out well. Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Bill Coon, Deschutes County Treasurer. I'd like to provide you with a high-level overview of economic conditions and what's the old line, may we live in interesting times? Well, we certainly are right now. I think the leading news for all of us is the what appears to be an pending federal government shutdown. And looks like it could be one of the largest shutdowns in recent history. Watching the economic news this morning, the House appears to be at an impasse. The Senate's trying to cobble together a short-term funding bill that will essentially fund the government through mid-November, but it likely will not pass the House. So just a reminder, we went through funding, spending cap and budget discussion earlier this year and actually approved a short-term funding that actually will expire at the end of September. So if we don't have a proposal in place by this Friday, the government will shut down. And so it's, estimated that it could affect as many as 4 million federal workers that will be furloughed almost immediately. And a huge impact to our budget, $5 billion per week in wages taken out of the economy. And so significant impact will be felt. It's obviously a development that we want to continue to track over the next several days. But right now, does not look good to be able to fund even on a temporary basis, unless Congress gets together and comes to some kind of an agreement. I hate to use these terms, but if there was a somewhat of a silver lining embedded in this negative news, I read a comment this morning that articulated that a government shutdown or a prolonged auto strike, which hasn't been resolved either, which is impacting a huge number of workers, could slow the economy, actually reducing the need for future policy action by the Federal Reserve. So that might take some of the pressure off of higher for longer with regards to rates, but we'll have to wait and see. Other news, and this appears, seems like it was a long time ago, but the Federal Open Market Committee met on September 20th and again took a pause on any rate increases. The discount rate will remain at 5.5%, but they did indicate a range of up to 5.75% by the end of the year. We'll have to wait and see what happens there. Some of the notes in the meeting minutes from that meeting indicate that a pause is a reflection of the progress already made, but that we haven't gotten to a point of confidence yet. In the statement, top line growth has been upgraded from modest to solid. Job gains remain strong, and they actually describe the banking sector as being more sound and resilient than previously indicated. Inflation continues to be described as elevated. Obviously, that will be impacted by a shutdown if that occurs. Regarding recent economic data points, summary of economic projections has revised the GDP forecast from 1% to 2.1% through the remainder of 2023, with a growth forecast of 1.5% forecasted for 2024. The unemployment rate forecast was revised downward from 4.1% to 3.8% at year end. Again, given this outlook, and it was dated from a week ago, most Fed officials continue to expect one additional rate hike before the end of the year. The expectation for the Fed is that they will keep rates higher for longer in 2024, showing now only 50 basis points of rate cuts during the year versus an earlier forecast of 100 basis points for the same period next year. And again, the Fed's forecast right now is a soft landing for the economy, thereby avoiding a recession. However, that forecast is not universally, appreciated by all economists. We had a presentation last week at the annual OACFO conference that was held in in Eagle Crest, and Dimitri Dellis, who's an economist for Piper Sandler, painted a somewhat different forecast. And he is convinced, along with other economists, of a pending recession in early 2024, based on the Fed's decision to keep rates higher and delay cutting rates in 2024. And also, he remains convinced that inflation is abating at a faster rate than the Fed is acknowledging, due to delays in reporting key components to those tracked indicators. Several issues include the gap between wages and housing costs, banks tightening lending standards, which is absolutely happening right now for businesses and consumers, and some other factors. Dellis also mentioned that with dramatic rise in U.S. government borrowing costs, the debt servicing has risen significantly and now exceeds the cost of defense spending, which is currently 7.5% of the total federal budget, and that's expected to rise to more than 10% in the next decade. So that's a significant issue worth following on, and it will have an impact on future federal spending. So
Let's hope it does.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah, it'll
the
definitely
interest
put
is
the brakes on things.
unbelievable.
Yeah. With this backdrop, U.S. debt issuance continued to increase as the Treasury rebuilds its balance sheet, with significant increases in borrowing costs over the past year. This will place an added burden on the federal budget, as I indicated earlier. Core CPI rose to 3.7% annually, which is up slightly from 3.5% in July. Core inflationary pressures remain in rent and housing and food prices that we've talked about earlier. With a seasonal uptick in energy costs expected this fall, forecasters are estimated that CPI remains at 3.8% through year end. And for perspective, and this is kind of looking back to see where we've come from, the CPI was 9.1% in June of 2022. So we've made significant progress, but I believe that the last, kind of 0.5% to a full 1% to get down to that target 2% is going to be extremely difficult to get to. And that's going to probably require a lot of pain to get to that point. Supporting the resiliency of the economy, August PPI rose 0.7%, more than a 0.4% rise expected, and following a flat reading the month prior, revised downwards from a 1% or 0.1% gain. Year over year, producer prices rose 1.6% in August, slightly more than a 1.3% gain expected. Monthly housing data is mixed. While housing starts rose 3.9% in August, pulling the annual pace to 1.4 million starts for the year. Building permits were up only slightly, 0.1%. Overall, construction activity has diminished over the past 2 years. With continued upward pressure on long-term rates, the average 30-year mortgage rate actually rose to 7.31%, matching the highest rate since 2001. And this is dampening both sales and refinancing activity nationwide. So how does that relate to our local economy? I went back and looked at our August Beacon report, which showed that the Bend area's median sales price declined. It did actually go down to $742,000 for the month. It's hard to actually find much positive there. But median sales prices continue to be impacted by higher end $1 million plus home sales. And looking into the data a little bit more in detail, of the 156 total sales in August, 38 sales were above $1 million. And also 43 of these sales were cash transactions. So again, we're starting to continue to see higher price homes selling, and a lot of those are cash sales, not being financed. There is a 2-month supply of homes currently listed. And again, this is a Bend market, but it's only 16 days listing for sold properties. So limited inventory. The homes that are available are selling quickly. And again, we're continuing to see a lot of $1 million plus homes being sold. Bend area single family home building permits ticked up slightly to 40 permits, up from 28 permits the prior month. Redmond statistics show a median sales price of $505,000, which is up from the prior month, but down from $542,000 in August of 2022. So again, looking back over the last year, and there's currently a 3-month supply. Redmond area permits were 23 for the month, declining from a yearly high of 35 in May. Most sales in the Redmond area were in the $400,000 to $500,000 price point, which again seems to find affordable housing for the region. I know we've talked a little bit about other markets. Sisters Market last month showed a $699,000 median sales price. Sun River, hard to believe, $981,000 for the month, and Lapine was $384,000 for the month. Certainly the elevated long-term rate environment has had an impact on home sales and likely will continue to do so.
Well, the one place in Sisters that had been listed for 24 million did sell for 15 million in August.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of unreal. The August Treasurer's report, I'll provide a few highlights. Our portfolio balance was 256 million at month end, a slight decrease of 2.2 million from July, and a decrease of 15 million year over year. And again, we've talked a little bit about that before with the rundown of ARPA funding, et cetera, that we're spending funds that we received a year ago at this time. So I'm not alarmed with the decline year over year because it really was impacted by kind of one-time opportunities. Net investment earnings were 491,000 for the month, which was 25,000 less than last month. And again, that's really due to decline in portfolio balance, but 282,000 higher than a year ago. And this again is reflective of the higher rate environment and just overall growth in the portfolio. All portfolio category balances were well within policy guidelines. The LGIP rate was increased to 4.5% on August 14th. And we were notified from the Oregon Treasury that they've increased that rate to 4.8% on September 18th. So that rate continues to go up. So that provides a great backstop for our short-term liquidity. And average portfolio yield was 2.84%, which continues to increase over the prior month. As a reminder, we're now calculating this yield on a weighted average basis. The portfolio had a weighted average time to maturity of 1.06 years, which is slightly shorter than the prior month. This is a function of the greater balances kept in short-term funds, both our banking balances and LGIP funding. Short portfolio duration gives the county maximum flexibility in this period of rate volatility. And it's not likely that we'll see an extended lengthening of maturity duration or significant increases in average yield until we enter our seasonal investing cycle in mid to late October, which is kind of right around the corner. So we're starting to see obviously opportunities with higher rates and really being able to take advantage of the extended duration and kind of what's happening on the longer end of the yield curve. We have been doing some short-term investing to take advantage of great rates in short-term treasuries. So taking some of our surplus liquidity and reinvesting it to gain a greater yield than what would be in the LGIP fund or with the bank. So anyway, any questions regarding my presentation?
So in the next 6 months or so, how would you picture short-term treasuries comparing to LGIP?
The forecast right now is rates will continue to hold steady and potentially rise. We're again seeing a lot of pressure on rates, short-term rates. The Fed, like I said earlier, their indicated policy action right now is higher for longer is how they describe it. So they really want to make sure that they've got a good handle on inflation before they start to cut rates. Earlier forecasts indicated fairly significant rate cuts in 2024, and now they're looking at maybe like two cuts. And so like that's going to keep a base on shorter term rates, which obviously will carry forward to longer term rates as well. So we don't really see much softening in longer term rates anytime soon. So I think it's going to be advantageous for the county as we get into our seasonal investing cycle with receipts of tax proceeds coming in, October through the end of the year. But again, just a sign that, the battle to curb inflation is not over. The Fed has indicated over and over again that their target rate is 2% for inflation. And it's going to be extremely difficult to get down to that rate without some significant shock to the economy. So we've got a couple things in front of us right now. Again, pending potential federal shutdown. And a lot of the labor disputes that are going on right now, with a lot of workers. There's a number of labor actions out there right now that will, if they're extended, will have an impact on economic growth.
You mentioned CPI is at 3.4 or something, or whatever the number is. How does that relate to, kind of the inflation number that we think we're dealing with here?
Yeah, it's the primary target that the Fed.
When we say we're looking for,
they also look at producer price inflation as well, which is inflation happening on the production side of things, and that's usually an indication of demand for consumer goods. There's a lot of concern right now that consumers are kind of running out of gas, literally. Extended increased borrowing, short-term borrowings, emergency withdrawals from 401ks, et cetera. So a lot of the consumer spending that is happening right now is not expected to be continued because of the fact that they're not utilizing wages themselves to support that spending. So I think that's, again, consumer spending comprises a huge amount of our GDP growth, upwards of maybe 55-60% of total GDP.
when we mentioned that 3 point whatever it was for CPI, do we think that of that is the inflation rate, or is that a different number? When the Fed says we want 2%,
Yeah, that's
is that CPI or not?
tracking mechanism they're utilizing right now. And again, just trying to ratchet economic growth down to get a firm handle on inflation. It's challenging. And Chairman Powell actually admitted that in some comments that he made a few days ago, that really difficult to fine tune economic growth because you either overreact or underreact. It's very difficult to actually achieve kind of that finite balance that they're looking for right now. So, and that's where I think a lot of other economists are concerned that we're going to overreact and really dampen economic growth and actually get to the point where then we actually move into recession.
Well, how many months did they use the term transitory?
Yeah.
They use that for months. So Bill, I do have a question.
Sure.
The county rate actually looks fairly flat for a while now, since starting like last December. I'm just wondering, do you think with property tax revenue coming in and things that rate may tick up more?
Absolutely.
I mean, we definitely have a gap right now.
Yeah, we haven't, obviously we're in a, when we invest to hold the maturity. And we did a few months back, we actually took a selective look at some individual investments and actually chose to liquidate and to be able to reinvest those funds at a higher rate. And also we were focused on maintaining a certain amount of short-term liquidity. But the challenge there is you book a loss when you do that.
Yes.
Because if you're not holding the maturity, you take an actual loss. And so very concerned that we don't absorb too much of loss there and actually have an impact to various county funds as a result of that. So we're challenged right now because we have a portfolio, the investing activity that was done, prior to this year, into last year and beyond. Very low rate environment. This is something that a lot of counties, a lot of municipalities are dealing with right now. It's just the nature of their portfolio and the fact that they're really locked into some of those low yielding investments until they mature. Because the offset is we would absorb large book losses, which we don't want to do either. So but I think as we get into a current investing cycle, there's some very attractive rates out there right now that we will be able to take advantage of as we move into that cycle.
And also, I mean, from this graph, it looks like there's a big slug there's a big slug that's maturing very soon. I mean, so in addition to the influx of tax revenue in November,
it's going to be,
we will have that to work with as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's where that average time to maturity, we're getting down to slightly over a year right now. And so again, we're working our way through some of those investments that are currently in our portfolio as they mature and certainly as opportunities come up to reinvest and take full advantage of the current rate market. Again, it's phenomenal how quickly rates have risen year over year. So again, looking at where we were a year ago compared to where we are right now, phenomenal increase in rates. It'll be great from an investing cycle. Not so good if you're the federal government and you're in a huge borrowing cycle right now. And so that's the kind of the yin and the yang of what's happening with the rate cycle.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you for digesting
Thank
all
you.
that financial information for us.
Just one kind of thread of continuity from what Bill was talking about to something I'd like to ask Robert about is, if a federal shutdown happens, there are many county programs that are federal funding driven. The other day I heard that the Women, Infant, Children, the federal program with Women, Infant, Children, which we are one of the, I don't know if we're the primary entity deploying women, infant, children funding in our community or just one, but I mean, the people from the Women, Infant, Children program that were being interviewed at the federal level said, they have funding for a couple weeks, and that's it. And then those benefits, that critical support to those families is going to be cut off. So I'm curious what that means for us in terms of not just kind of volatility or unpredictability in inflow of funds that we are deploying for various services and investments, but whether that actually affects our not just the money that we put out into the community, but our workforce, and dollars that we use to pay county workers as well. So you don't have to answer that right away, but I would love to hear some thoughts on that at some point during your report.
Commissioners, Chair DeBonne, thank you for having me. Robert Tintel, Chief Financial Officer on the financial report. Commissioner Chang, I will generically say in general, so what I've experienced in the past during these shutdowns, a lot of times, especially grant funded or federal funded programs, funding may be delayed in some areas. Eventually they may catch up, sometimes depending on if that funding source has a reserve or they have funds that they can utilize until they get the additional funds. It could be specific by program. I think health services would be a big department we'd want to check with to see if there is a federal shutdown, then how would their programs be impacted, and we can find out that information. But it would vary, I think, by grant and funding source as well.
Thank you.
All right, so we are here to discuss the finance report for August 2023, and you should have that in your packet starting on page 400. I was just very impressed that how large this packet was. So hopefully you made it to page 400 to review all of this information in advance. So a lot of work on your end. So thank you for all of that. We are looking at the unaudited report again, as I mentioned, for the first couple months. So first is just a general fund dashboard that you have in front of you. we're looking at our revenue year to date in the general fund is 1.6 million. Again, it's only 2 months right now, so we're not heavy into the fiscal year yet, or 3.6% of budget. And actually 1.6 million was also last year to date as well at this point in time, but it was 3.8% of the budget. Our expenses year to date are 7.2 million. And again, this is in the general fund. Last year, they were 7.3 million, so just slightly less. And our beginning fund balance is 14 million. So the dashboard at this point, you can see it looks well. We'll talk a little bit more about the general fund in just a minute. Page 401 in your packet is the position control summary. One of the few months that month to month, there is no actual change in FTE. There are just a couple items I'd want to point out to you though. If you look at the sheriff's office line, gray shaded through, right now they do have 38.25 vacant positions, which is almost 14%. It was about 33 positions at the end of last year that they were vacant. So they're up slightly in their vacant positions from last year. Same with, and as you've heard the story, adult parole and probation. Again, they have 6 vacant positions right now. Last year, they did average throughout the year between 6 to 7 vacant positions. So that continues. Solid waste, they're at 26.83% right now, but you may remember they added 11 new positions during the budget process. So that's why they have, more vacancies this fiscal year right now. So that's just because as they hire these new positions. Fair and Expo, they have 5.75 vacant positions right now, but again, they added 4 positions during the budget process. So it's not quite a trend yet. I'd be looking at it as they fill those positions. Finally, 911. Now this is a success story, and I think you've heard this from Sarah as well. I say they only have 5 vacancies as of the end of August, which is great. Last year or September of 22, they had 10 FTE vacant positions. So, this is half. So that's just a great thing for them. And I know you've heard about that as well, but just wanted to point out the FTE for those areas there. So as we go to page 402 in the countywide, this is all funds combined. Just a reminder, top of the page, year complete 16.7%. We're only 2 months in. So you would think typically if everything flowed evenly throughout the year, our revenues would be at 16.7%. Our expenditures would be at 16.7%, but we know everything doesn't flow just evenly throughout the year. Our total resources are at 14%. So total revenues and resources coming in are at 14% thus far. Page 403 in your packet, our total requirements or our expenditures are at 12% thus far to date. And this is just a high level. And then on page 405, how's our fund balance looking at this point in time? Budget to actuals, the middle columns, the actuals were at 241 million, our fund balance. Our budget was 181. Although if we look at our projections for all funds combined by the end of the year, again, this is 10 months out of estimations, we are expecting that to get closer to our budget, but still above at $205 million. Now we will look again, a deeper dive into the general fund, page 406 in your packet. The top line on resources, you have property taxes current. In the current column, I just want to point out you have actuals of negative 1091. Just want to let you know that is a posting error that actually should be in the prior year. And we're making that adjustment. Obviously, we haven't had any current year property taxes collected yet, but that will be starting soon. In fact, I do want to mention that assessor's office should be certifying the tax roll first week in October. After that is certified, the information comes to finance. We send out the tax statements to get printed. We are obligated by October 25th to get the tax statements in the mail. We should be meeting that deadline that's anticipated. Of course, is after it's certified, I think within a day or so, the information's uploaded within the dial system and taxpayers can find the information online at that point. But we are scheduled to get the tax statements out on time as usual. And so people can look forward for that information.
I don't think looking forward to that information is what they would say.
Well, actually, we've already been getting lots of phone calls, especially from snowbirds. Who
Oh,
are
yes.
anxiously waiting to pay their tax. Some people they want to pay their taxes before they, leave the area. So some people are right on it. So.
Okay.
But at least they appreciate the information. If they don't appreciate maybe that they have to pay. So, but point taken. So our revenues to this point are only 4% in the general fund year to date, again, because our tax revenue mostly comes in November. Our expenditures are at 15% year to date as well. One other thing I want to mention, you did celebrate IT today with 25 years of service. This month, our deputy tax administrator, Judy Haas, celebrated her 25 years this month as well. She opted not to come before the board, but I do want to acknowledge her as our deputy tax collector, that she does a great job, her and her team. And this is coming up on their busy season. So for 25 years, and she hasn't been in this position for 25 years, but she's been with the county for 25 years. So I truly value and appreciate her and her team. So they're gearing up for their busy season. So
They've already decorated.
they have.
Not going to be time later.
Would you encourage us to stop by and say hi and and thank Judy for her service
That would
individually?
yes.
Is that
More
more her
individual
style?
is more her style as opposed to in a public meeting. So that is correct. Thank you. Okay, page 48408 in your packet, TRT Fund 16170. Again, we are 2 months into this. I believe you also get supplemental information with the TRT actual to date thus far. Just a comparison for actuals compared to last year. July to July was down 4.9% and August was down 0.8%. So at least August didn't continue the high decrease. And these are compared to last year. So that down from last year is about $96,000. But if you look at compared to budget, so even though we're down from actuals, but we did decrease our budget from last year. If you remember, we are only, but we're 2.1% down from budget, from what we had budgeted, which is about $88,000. So for these first 2 months, so it's a little better than when you compare to actuals from last year. When you're comparing, what are we from what we budgeted? So it's about 2.1% down. And as we know, July through September are usually our biggest months, our highest months of getting some TRT revenue in. So we'll see how the trends continue. One of the points to notice is our projection column at the end, the total fund balance, 1.999800. A lot of it assumes we're going to still receive all the revenue by the end of the year and our requirements. And that $2 million, again, is for our last payment to the Sun River Service District, and that will happen in fiscal year 25, July 1st. So really, there isn't capacity right now for any future commitments coming out of TRT funds. I just want to make sure I, reiterate that comment as well at this point. Next page, 409 in your packet, ARPA Fund 200. Again, you will see the resources. We don't have much actuals this year, the middle column this month, except for interest. But I will let you know this month, September 12th of this month, so it will be reported in the September statements, but we did receive the second payment of the local assistance travel consistency funds of the $2.3 million that we have budgeted. We did actually receive them in, and if you remember through the budget process, those funds were allocated to the courthouse. So we do have those funds available for that project.
Robert,
yes,
kind of connect back to the treasurer's report we were just listening to. So those funds, $4.6 million just came in. We're only going to have it's only going to be in our hands for a short period of time until we expend that on the courthouse. Where is that held? Well, for such a, when we know it's going to be for such a short period, and what kind of yields do we get on that?
First point to clarify, we received the first 2.3 million last year. This is just the second half of it, of the 4.6 of the 2.3 that we just received this month. How our investments work at the county, all county cash is pooled together anyway in a big pool, and we invest those funds. So it could be more from this fund, less from this fund, but it's all pooled together in one of the $260 million investment pool that we have. And then as all those investments are all those cash is invested, shared, then each fund, their proportion of cash gets a proportion of the interest earnings. So we invest as a cash pot, not with an exception, but not as much specifically for these dollars. We do look at, when Bill's investing, what are our cash flow needs going to be? For example, when we received the Negus $22 million in, we looked at what's the cash flow for that project? How are they going to spend that money in which months and what years? So when we're investing for big items like that, we look at when do we think we're going to be spending that money? And we ask for maturities for those big items. Otherwise, in general, for general county expenditures, we know on average how much we spend per month. And so that's why we try to ladder out our bond maturities and have it somewhat even in some months, because we know we're always going to be paying out these monies. And so we look for that on average. So for big projects, we do try to match by month what we're going to spend. In fact, I asked Lee, what are your cash projections for the courthouse? What do you think we're going to spend? So we'll try to match maturities with those big cash flows coming up.
But for example, these LATCF funds, they don't have a lot of restrictions around them. So we can just put them in a general pool of cash.
Yep, it's included in our pool of cash and it's part of the pooled. Now, if we truly thought we were just going to have funds for a month, we would just hold them likely in our local government investment pool. That way we can easily access it, because that's the great thing about the pool. It's liquid and we can draw down those funds at any point. That's the short answer. Let's see here. So again, with ARPA, we spent about 14 million in fiscal year 22, out the door also about 14 million in fiscal year 23. And the board recently allocated the remaining $5.2 million of all ARPA funds. So there are no more ARPA funds at this time that we are allocating out. We've been fully allocated all the funds. There's about $10 million that we're remaining to be spent, but it's all been allocated at this point. Okay, page 411. In your packet, Sheriff's Office Fund 255. Again, just want to highlight their main revenue points are property taxes for their local law enforcement districts 1 and 2, the countywide and the rural. Those will be starting to come in, obviously, in October, November is the main time frame for that's why they only have 2% of revenue year to date actual, and their expenditures are at 15% thus far, which is under the 16.7% if we averaged it out. Health Services Fund 274 on page 412 in your packet. This combines their funds, and we'll talk about this separately. Just want to point out their resources here. Actuals to date is 22%. Last month, it was only at 4% or $2.3 million. So they received more revenue, accounted for revenue in this. A large portion of that is the state grant that you'll see of the 4.9 million, that first line there in their resources. And we'll talk about some of their separate funds next. Page 413, Fund 274, their admin. Just the big item to notice that stands out is the middle column on their total requirements for actuals. You'll see it looks like there's expenditures to date has 144%. That is just because it looks like because their administration allocation is a negative number is how they work with allocating out their admin. So it throws off that number. It's at their expenditures thus far to date is $2.1 million. As they start having the other funds reimburse and charge out their administration allocation, we'll see numbers there and that'll flow through. Their Behavioral Health Fund 274 on page 414. This is one of the bigger areas for their revenue where they saw the increase. They're at 25% here. Last month, they were only at 2.1 million or the 4%. So they did recognize more revenue this month than they had before. State grant at $4.8 million. And then their OHP capitation also increased. Those were the major categories where their revenues had increased from the prior month. Their expenditures are at 10% year to date thus far for the 2 months. Page 415 on Fund 274 for public health. Again, this is where you see on the expenditures, just wanted to point out their administration allocation. You can see it's at 0, so they haven't allocated that out yet, but those will continue to be allocated as they continue working through the year. Page 416, Community Development Fund 295. I know you hear about this as well, but as we look at their revenue projections for the year, they are anticipating to be about $1 million under from what they budgeted. Their code compliance section had decreased because of building valuations. Their on-site wastewater decreased because of the application volume. The current planning area, they decreased the revenue in that area because of the application volume decrease and building valuations. And same with their long-range planning. As you know, you've had conversations with them in that. As far as their expenditures, they've been working on reducing their FTE, or they've recognized savings as positions become vacant, as they've had announcements of people moving on from their positions, and also recognize the savings from unfilled positions. Thus far, CDD has used $102,000 of their fund balance to operate through August 31st of this year. So they are drawing on their reserves to continue to operate, but they also are being creative and looking at ways to save to match their revenues that are coming in. Page 417, Road Fund 325. I do want to mention in their revenue year to date, the federal PILT payment, you'll see it $2.4 million in the actual column, which is a little bit over from what we had budgeted, which is nice. This just want to make a comment on the new road agency. The new road agency received $695,000 in April of 23, which was last fiscal year, but of SRS funds, of forest receipts. However, the road fund has not yet received the additional funds we anticipate yet from creating the road agency, but we're anticipating that should come later in the fiscal year. So we just haven't noticed it yet. It wasn't in this PIL payment, but we hope as we receive funds later, we'll see the benefit of that road agency at that time.
And when did this PIL payment come in?
This PIL payment came in April. The road agency came in PIL. This road money came in August.
Okay.
So the next PILT, when we receive the SRS funds, forest receipts, that's where we anticipate we'd receive some extra funds.
Okay.
Because of setting up this road agency.
So it's not like they withheld the funds. It just the effect of the new road agency just hasn't happened yet.
That's right. Because of the formula where they subtract out and then you get the difference. So it's we'll see how that all comes to play.
And so when do you anticipate us seeing whether it all worked or not?
I'd have to look at the month, but it's later in the fiscal year. It's late in the fiscal year. It's not early in the fiscal year. It's probably I'm assuming it's maybe in the April timeframe as well. And actually, we could follow up with Chris on that as well and see if he has an estimate on that. Okay, adult parole and probation, page 418. Their revenues are at 22%, which is higher than the 16.7, but their DOT grant aid SB 1145 revenue line, that's a quarterly payment. So as they receive that for the first quarter, for the first few months, their expenditures are at 13% thus far. I think I'll go through a few pages here. Fair and Expo, Fund 615 on page 422. I'm not going to go over detail again on the Fair and Expo. There is a joint meeting with the Fair Board on October 24th at 5:30, and they will highlight the fair and rodeo financials and going over all the details for their funds.
I did have a question.
Yeah.
You went by solid waste.
Yep.
And the revenue was at 21%,
That is correct.
higher than the year to date. Is that because there's still construction going on in the city of Bend? I just wondered, or is it because we usually see more at the transfer, at not landfill in the summer?
Yes, that's what they mentioned. Disposal tons are typically higher in the summer with reductions in the winter. So they would see an increase in revenue, higher percentage in the earlier months and less during the winter. To your point, that's exactly that. And that's similar to comment A that they have. And then July commercial revenue includes the payment for the prior Highway 97 bypass disposal charges. And yeah, their revenue is at 21%, while their expenditures so far, the requirements are only at 9% for the first 2 months.
Yes.
Which is early.
Well, and they're missing quite a few employees.
So let's see, risk fund 670, page 428. Their total requirements last month, we did talk about they had a larger payout. They were at 19% last month, and now they're at 24%, excuse me. So it's not quite the dramatic increase that it was just for that 1 month point in time. So it only increased about 200,000 this month because it was 906,000 the month before. So in the 1 month activity, we didn't see that type of payment that we saw in the prior month. So it seems to be within reason there as well, how that fund's operating. And page 429 in your packet, Health Benefits Fund 675. Again, this is 2 months of activity thus far. You'll notice the expenditures are still light. I say light at 2.4 million for the first 2 months, but it's also because if you remember when we get billings for health insurance claims costs, health claims costs, those claims are delayed. You'll go to the doctor in July. We may not get a bill for that in August until September. The bills we've received thus far, we have been looking at them, and if those claim costs relate back to June of last year, we've still been charging those back. Last week, actually, the last billing we got, we looked at, there was only $35,000 worth of claim costs that's still related to last year. So we think we're about done posting any expenditures to last year to this fund, because as you know, our books are still open. They're not final until we get through the audit. So at some point we will have updated numbers for last year, which are reflected in last year actuals, but we will reconcile last year's ending fund balance numbers to this year's beginning working capital numbers, beginning fund balance numbers, which will help true up the fund, and we'll monitor that.
Okay, so Robert, I have a question. I went back to look at prior months, and apparently May of 23, the resources of requirements was 3,110,517. But then in June, that number jumped up to 5 million more, 8,110,517. But there wasn't any footnote when that entry was made. And I was just kind of wondering, do we think that the health benefit fund is going to end up then at that 3.8 million? Is that what you're saying now? I mean, there was such a big change, $5 million in one, that I was like going, okay, when did that really happen? And then I had to go back and look.
Yeah, and that was because we had higher expenditures in the
Right.
year, so we had to take the money out of reserve, which comes out of the ending fund balance to pay for those expenditure costs. So this is, to your point, as we are finalizing the billings now for last year, and we're posting back to last fiscal year, that's when we'll know where the final numbers are. And then we're still like a month or so before we get to closing.
You can really
the
close that
actual
book.
books.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's part of the audit process. Once we make sure we don't have any more adjustments, because as we're reconciling all the funds now, we don't have any adjustments. And then if the auditors, while they're here, the external auditors, if they have any adjustments, once we know they're all done, then we officially close the books and we could true up the ending fund balance.
I just think that $5 million adjustment at that one between those 2 months seemed like a bit that should have been footnoted.
Yes, and that, as you know, did go through the budget process, the public process, and had a budget resolution associated with it. But to your point, yeah, it could be noted, and that's what it was used for. Yep. And then the last fund was Fund 911, which also appears to be on target. They obviously haven't received their revenue yet. It's only at 1% because, again, they get their taxes coming soon as well. Any other questions on the financial report?
Thank you very much. But this time, we're going to go to, we have other items, but let's finish our agenda items. So number 4 and number 18. Number 4 was from our consent agenda, and it's been paired with item number 18, request for reconsideration of Mountain View petition to incorporate, along with our order proposed denying this. Yeah. Will? Who? Stephanie and Will. Well, and maybe it's just a discussion for us. Yeah, maybe there's no other.
Good morning.
Here we go.
Marshall, Assistant Legal Counsel. The one of the items that I'm addressing under other items is the commissioners and the county in general received a request, an email request from the lead petitioner, or from, actually it said from the city of Mountain View, requesting reconsideration of the board's vote to deny the petition. And so we advise that the board take formal action. There is no provision in the county code that pursuant to which the board could exercise any authority to reconsider its decision. So wanted to bring this to your attention, answer any questions, and we do have an order that has been prepared that would formally deny the request for reconsideration.
Okay. So as I say, yeah, the order denying from our consent agenda had been before this, and now this has come in since. I would like to, acknowledge to the petitioner that, this is a community conversation and a community discussion, for a request for reconsideration to come in through email and just be signed sincerely Mountain View is, kind of a generic statement from a, generic email address. You're assuming it's the petitioner.
Right.
So as I say, my message to the petitioner, if that's who sent this, is, please communicate with us. Yeah, I'm available to talk directly on these items. Let's talk about what could be. We went through this very public process for the incorporation request by the petitioner. But this isn't even a relationship. This is just kind of throwing it over the fence.
I do have a draft copy if you'd like to take a look at what's been prepared, and we can discuss that.
So in response to the request for reconsideration, yeah, that's fine. I think, there was on the agenda an order denying a request for reconsideration was attached. Yeah, so it has been attached to our, yep.
Yeah, thank you.
So you're saying there's nothing in the process that officially provides this to the petitioner, but now by receiving this request, this is our official response.
Correct. Now, I do want to note for the record that any party may appeal the board's decision to LUBA. So just wanted to clarify that. Not that impacts your consideration of an order denying something which is not a process that exists under the code.
And this letter does indicate that that's the intention, is to pursue a LUBA appeal. We're warned.
Well, and at the back of that, it did talk about the history of the Lapine, incorporation. And I want to thank this person for putting in few paragraphs. So City of Lapine Incorporation attempts, and then the history, 1985, 1994, 2000, and then the final that did pass. So there's quite a history here, and that's a scenario to be reviewed. There was the concept of a port for economic development. There was one of the votes was for basically all of South County, which was a very large, incorporation request. So there's some history, but how it even needed to go through multiple iterations to get there. So yeah, just for discussion or for clarity here, do you propose we take a response to reconsideration order before the decision then? Our item number 4, original item number 4.
I propose that that the board first consider the vote on the petition, and then after that vote, then you can address reconsideration.
So yeah, we'll get officially back to item number 4, the approval of order denying the petition. Is there any discussion or motion or proposed word changes? So is there a motion?
I move approval of order number 2023-037, denying the petition for incorporation of the proposed City of Mountain View and adopting the findings and conclusions and prescribing an effective date.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Dare, Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes. So that's order 2023-037 denying the petition. And this is a good fact set. I mean, it's great information. It puts the whole big picture together about what, the goals, the economic, the population, the land use. This is a good work product in itself. And I want to thank everybody who put that together in response to the petition. So that can be a use as a reference point for future discussions in that area of our county.
This letter requesting reconsideration, it talks about, it's asking the board to initiate a special district process. And I don't have a good grasp of what is entailed with that and what that would accomplish. Can staff provide us some background on that?
Again, Stephanie Marshall. At this time, legal counsel has not looked into what would be involved. We could coordinate with staff at CDD to determine if there is a process, what that process would entail. I would suspect that there would be a formal application with application fees that would be associated with that, rather than just a statement in a letter that appears to touch on several topics, including reconsideration. But that's about as complete an answer as I have at this time.
Do we have any indication what services this special district would be intended to provide? I mean, are we talking about creation of a fire district, or what?
I would guess again, this particular effort to incorporate appeared to be broad, and then more information would come as we got closer to the date for the board's decision making and consideration. So it's not crystal clear to me as a member of legal counsel staff here, but certainly we're happy to reach out to whether it's the chief petitioner or try to find out who the author of this letter is, to get some more information as to what it is specifically they're looking for.
Or we could, the way that you described it, that, a special district formation there is an application process for that. I mean, I think we can just say right now, if you want to submit us an application for a special district, we would we are all, as always, open to reviewing and considering that.
Correct.
Well, I don't know that a special district is in the purview of the Board of Commissioners. It's
right.
a group of people looking for a service. They would go to the clerk if it needed to be voted on, but I don't know that it's a decision of the Board of Commissioners. It's not an application to us to say they want to have a fire district.
But would it, is it the kind of thing where we would refer the measure to the voters?
That would be a process through the clerk's office. I mean, maybe, I don't know.
It's probably similar to what just
Come on up,
happened to
Dave.
Terrebonne.
Yeah, Commissioner Dave Doyle, County Attorney. This would be, they'd have to, if they're asking for a county service district, that'd be in your wheelhouse. There'd be no basis for one, but it would be in your wheelhouse. If they were talking about a standalone district formation, it would be akin to Terrebonne Sanitary, Alfalfa Fire. There's a process through ORS Chapter 198 where you would have a hand in potentially referring that to the ballot, but the county has no hand in it beyond that. It's more a formality through the ORS, and it would operate completely independent and autonomous of anything that the county would be involved with. And it has about as much chance, I think, of getting off the ground as the city and corporation did. There's 150 people out there in an area the size of 10 Bends. You're not going to get there from here. This fellow can keep trying and trying, but he's not going to get there. He's eating up a lot of staff time and resources in the process.
So as I say, at this time, we're discussing item number 18, request for reconsideration of Mountain View petition to incorporate. So this was kind of a email to us saying, please reconsider. And there's a proposed order number denying that request also. Any other discussion? Is there a motion?
I'll move approval of board order denying the request to reconsider the petition to incorporate a new city of Mountain View. And that would be order number 2023-041.
No second.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
and chair votes yes. As I say, let's have a relationship. Let's talk. There's a lot of history of that Lapine Incorporation. This is community discussion. It doesn't need to be kind of a black box being thrown it over back and forth over the fence is my thought process.
Yeah. And what I said during the hearing the other day was, what interests me about this whole proposal and this application is trying to provide better services for Deschutes County residents. So if there's, if incorporation or special districts are two potential pathways to pursue better services, I think that there are probably more, and we're open to discuss.
Things. Yep. Yeah. Great. Okay. Thank you so much. So at this time, other items, and do we have an executive session today? I don't know of anything. So just other items.
I'll report back that the Wolf Livestock Depredation Compensation and Financial Assistance Committee met for the second time last night. The group is trying to prepare for a early 2024 application cycle for the funding, which is primarily state funding and a teeny little bit of federal funding mixed in. The two pieces of that application will be compensation requests, kind of looking back from depredations that occurred primarily in 2023 and into January or so 2024, and then prevention projects looking forward, to things that can be done in 2024 to help reduce the likelihood of wolf depredation of livestock. So the meeting yesterday was primarily, the big item that we worked on was essentially like a rate schedule for how what a heifer, what a calf, what a bull, what a sheep, a lamb, a ewe, what different basically sizes of different species of animal would be compensated at, plus, a provision which we borrowed from Umatilla County that, if a livestock owner has, special breeds, is, using special, animal husbandry practices, and can make the argument for a different price or a different value, we're open to them providing a request and a justification of that. Well, next meeting will be in December, early December, and that will focus a lot on what kind of prevention projects could be included in this application.
Thank you.
Yeah, so is that the other thing I would mention is that on Friday morning, I was able to help organize a tour for Representative Confam, who sits on the Joint Ways and Means Committee, specifically with a natural resources hat on in the state legislature currently, to go and look at federal forest restoration activities that are happening in this area, and talk about the unique organizational challenges of the Forest Service at this moment in time, specifically the Deschutes National Forest, that has more money than they have people to be able to put that money on the ground in work, and also to the role of the Deschutes Collaborative Forest Project in helping to facilitate active restoration of the Deschutes National Forest over the last 10 plus years.
Getting the word out about the great work that's been done here over these long period of time.
Yeah. And as a member of the Joint Ways and Means Committee, Representative has the opportunity to ensure that things like that landscape resiliency program that we just heard about from Kevin Moriarty today will be adequately funded in the next biennium. The federal forest restoration program within the ODF will have adequate funding to support the work that it has been supporting in the federal forests, and et cetera. So it was great to, I was really appreciative that she took 3 hours out of her Thursday or Friday morning to spend with us out in the woods.
So we were all at the District 2 meeting for Association of Oregon Counties. I was able to stay on Friday and most of Saturday for other discussions. Just as I say, we were all at the table when we talked about the wildfire hazard maps. On Friday, there was the kind of the AOC business, the board meeting, talking about the proposed budget, which we heard about at our District 2 meeting also. And then after that, it was more, how does AOC kind of coordinate and get real organized about legislative advocacy? The legislative staff was all there, and it was a good relationship builder. As I say, there's about 35 commissioners out of the 120 that were participating. It was real good just to meet a few of the commissioners I hadn't met yet, people that had come in through the election process. So I could go on, but we all kind of know what the status is there.
Will there be a summary of the kind of legislative platform that came out of that Saturday workshop?
Yeah, so I think there was 2 breakout sessions and people talking about the different topics. And the bottom line is each one of those was really setting up for like this October 2nd sit down for Health and Human Services. So really there was no action taken other than just communicating, setting the tone and the feel for a group of commissioners that were there. So the legislative positions can be, more mature as we have these next discussions. So yeah, there'll be minutes, I'm sure, but it wasn't, this is our position. It was more, these are the topics. This is how we're going to get to our position.
And I just want to say, I'm thankful that we don't have our meeting on Monday. I did have a substantial conversation with Jessica Pratt regarding being at the October 2nd meeting next Monday in Salem. I was able to give names of Deschutes County residents that have had elk damage recently, and then the fact that there have been 80 elk eating on a cut hay orchard, I think it's probably orchard grass hayfield this last week. And then, of course, it got rained down too, but the elk have been there, and I'm sure that farmer has got significant losses because the elk came first, and then, of course, it started raining. So, Representative Levy, Bobby Levy, has that group that she's putting together. And Deschutes County is one of the members.
So we talked about that letter of possible letter of support for a biomass effort. So that was just one of my notes here. Eastern Oregon Counties Association, we had a request for, annual partnership on that. I was able to talk to some of the commissioners from Eastern Oregon, and it does boil down to the camaraderie of this land mass, referring to about 2/3 of the state, and all of us working together, especially through legislative times. And at the AOC, it's a reminder that I want our legislators to understand, they're talking about big changes in the funding of the services of the state of Oregon, but the counties are just that special on the ground implementing services level of government. So when we go to a legislative update or a hearing or relationships with the governor, we need to be strong and clear. So I'm supportive of partnering with EOCA at the general membership level. Remember, I'd always thought of it as helping the BIC get over the line so the Deschutes Forest Plan could happen. I'm not focused on that anymore. It's a shame that that's just going on and on and on. And you mentioned that. It's like that was kind of a thing of the past, but it's a shame if we have these national forests and we can't get a management plan updated. So I'm philosophically, it's a shame we can't get there, but I'm not interested in
Depends
investing
on the
that anymore.
stakeholders of the region that the forest sits in. And
Just a big gridlock system is what I'm seeing. So, but yeah, I'm just letting you know, I'm supportive of the EOCA membership. I think it's $12,500 annual. This will give us a little bit more lobbying alignment with Eastern Oregon. So not all the topics and partnership with the counties.
so do we need a motion?
If we want to make it formal, I was just
I
sharing with my fellow.
move that we pay our EOCA dues of 12,500.
Yep, and I'll second it then. Okay. So that's an action item we're taking at this time. So it's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion?
I'll just say again that I do not understand what value Deschutes County is getting out of this investment. AOC is our opportunity to be represented as counties collectively. You look at, and you look at the AOC, executive team, the board. I mean, you've got the current chair, Commissioner DeGroot. You got John Schaefer. I mean, I feel like Eastern Oregon is adequately represented at all levels of AOC to advocate for us.
I appreciate that they use a different lobbyist. I think Rocky brings some expertise that we can use. So I'm happy with continuing to pay their dues.
Okay, well, good discussion. So any other seeing on Commissioner Dare?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang? And Chair will vote yes. And we've been in this situation before. So thank you for that discussion.
Every year.
And then there was a Representative Mannix sent an email, Kevin Mannix, about museums and historical societies. They're kind of doing a survey. So just for my fellow commissioners, because it was an email to Commissioner Chair, we asked that you do a little just feedback about who's your existing museums and historical societies. So I don't have a feel for this effort, but it sounds like they're trying to just put a big list of everybody together, possible for funding or whatever efforts may be coming. So and so I sent it to Nick. We're on it. And we'll go ahead and bring that back to us whenever it's done, just to see it. No big deal. No big deal at all.
We Stephanie Roberts.
Yep. For me,
It's have the potential to address some of our needs with the kind of dissolution of the Historic Landmarks Commission.
as I say, it was out of the blue. I don't know much about it. We'll learn about it as it comes. So I just wanted you to hear about it. So next Tuesday, October 3rd, Oasis Village groundbreaking. I've committed to going to the Oregon Business and Industry Tour. Madras is the Daimler testing facility at 8 a.m. So I'm just saying I may or may not be there at 10 o'clock. So I struggled with, should I commit to one or the other? But I'm like, who knows what the traffic is and how interesting it'll be up at Daimler. So I may or may not be there at 10 o'clock at the Oasis groundbreaking.
I'm going to join the OBI tour later, but I've seen the Daimler testing facility, so I can pass on that.
Yeah, and I had never been to that one.
Yeah,
So that's
no, it's
kind of
pretty
exactly my conclusion. Okay, anything else? Nick, yeah.
Thank you, Commissioners. I have a letter of support to the Department of Land Conservation and Development to support the City of La Pines technical assistance grant that we've previously discussed with the board. So this is a letter for your consideration for approval to support their application.
Well, I'd say, yeah, it's pretty exciting seeing the city of La Pine being able to get organized at this level, even because there's a lot of things happening, big effort of homes and some lot development that was happening. Obviously, Deschutes County is a big player in the people's land that we represent in that area. So I'd be supportive.
This is a great project. I'm curious. It seems like we're never flooded with requests for or with applications. It's not like there's 6 projects coming forward within Deschutes County on any given year. Are we helping to coordinate that, or is it just kind of that's the pace that these kinds of proposals mature?
Well, it really depends if the city is going to solicit a letter of support for us in their grant application. So the city of Bend, city of Redmond, city of Sisters are regular applicants to DLCD for planning and similar programs, projects in their jurisdictions, but they are not always asking us for a letter of support. But when they actually are in process, we certainly are coordinating with them with be it comprehensive plan updates or transportation system plan or a lot of their planning efforts and activities. We coordinate extensively with them.
So there's more coming forward from Deschutes County than we're tracking through these letters.
Correct.
It's good to know.
So, and it's for comprehensive plan and housing and economic needs analysis. So it's pretty exciting. Is there a motion?
So move support of the letter supporting the city of La Pine for the technical assistance grant of 60,000.
Second.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Dare?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang? Yes. And Chair will vote yes. One question, is an analyzation a word or should it be analysis? Yeah, an analyzation.
A second update, and I see Eric will have an update here in just a moment. I just wanted to share with the board and really with the community that today we initiated a recruitment for a member of our Deschutes County Budget Committee. The board's aware that Bruce Barrett is not seeking a reappointment to another 3-year term. We'll certainly celebrate Bruce later in the year, but just given that it's going out today, it's the September 27th. The recruitment is through October 23rd, so almost a month. For the community's benefit, this is a volunteer position, to be clear, but a very, very important position for Deschutes County. Our goal is to have, we'll issue a press release today or tomorrow, in very short order. And our goal is to work with the board for the board to appoint there's just one of 3 members on the county's budget committee in time for that person to attend and observe the December 12th mid-year budget committee meeting so that we hit the ground running with our new member on January 1st. And again, we will look forward to celebrating Bruce Barrett and his contributions later this year. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Bruce was there for a long time, and we're not saying goodbye to him right now, but I'm just thinking, this a budget committee seat can be, a dozen years or so, and it's so valuable when you see the evolution of the budget over time and the scope and scale of what we do and the relationships with the department. So, anybody interested in that, please apply.
Just the last piece is the recruitment is on our website. It's at our human resources website, we have a place for committee appointments and volunteer positions. So that's where people can find it most immediately. And our press release, of course, will have the link available. So with that, if I may turn it over to Eric. Eric.
Thank you, Nick. The commissioners were contacted by Partners in Care asking if the board would be interested in adopting a proclamation in support of National Hospice and Palliative Care Month, which is in November. So I just wanted to ask if commissioners would like that proclamation to come to the board. I assume yes, but wanted to double check.
Yeah, I'm supportive.
All right, we will arrange for that.
Thank you, Eric. And I sent you the email, so.
Yes,
We're responding. Anything else? Seeing none, meeting adjourned.